Chapter 1665, Confrontation. Tens of thousands of light-years away, Part 1. Upon seeing Jan Droga, Darth Malthael finally confirmed that Darth Sidious was manipulating this duel through a method akin to remote control, much like a puppet. However, what kind of puppet could possess the immense power of the towering figure before him, even under remote control, and still be formidable enough to challenge him? Darth Malthael was acutely aware that there were no more than 5 beings in the galaxy capable of standing against him. In other words, unless Darth Sidious himself was involved, this opponent should not have been a match for him. What kind of sorcery could achieve such a feat? This realization filled Darth Malthael with dread. When had Darth Sidious acquired such power? This was a stark deviation from the original plot, and if the other party truly wielded such power, it would be catastrophic. If Darth Sidious could send out a puppet with the same strength as his own, it implied that he could engage in battles and appear on any battlefield at will. It was well known that whether it was Darth Sidious, Count Dooku, or Darth Malthael, although they were among the galaxy's top powerhouses, they also commanded vast forces. To ensure these forces operated according to their will, their daily responsibilities were immense. If they became absentee leaders, their forces would soon deviate from their intended paths, likely heading towards disastrous outcomes. This was precisely what happened with the Galactic Empire in the original plot. In the later stages of his rule, Darth Sidious almost entirely neglected governance, immersing himself in the study of dark powers. Consequently, the Galactic Empire deteriorated into a state rife with warlords, militarism, perversion, and corruption. This decay eventually sparked widespread resistance, leading to its ultimate downfall. Currently, Darth Malthael could afford to focus on his research into eternal life, travel to the planet Korriban for dark rituals, and personally engage in frontline battles in the Mordell star area because his fourth civilization was relatively stable. The fourth civilization was newly established, with dedicated officials and no uncontrollable forces like ancient families or colossal corporations. Thus, even if Darth Malthael was absent for a while, things would not go awry. However, the Galactic Republic was a different story. After over 25,000 years of development, it was plagued by every conceivable negative factor: corrupt bureaucrats, ancient families, privileged core planets, supercorporations that could defy the regime, and complex interpersonal relationships and factions. Even the supreme leader, the Speaker, faced unimaginable complications in issuing orders. Consider the political struggles involved in selecting commanders for the 2 fronts when the Galactic Republic launched a 2-pronged attack on the Duchy of Dawn. Despite all these drawbacks, the Galactic Republic's survival was a testament to its resilience. For Darth Sidious to maintain his status, he could not afford to leave Coruscant for extended periods. A mere 2 or 3 days' absence could result in chaos orchestrated by various factions. But the puppet standing before Darth Malthael could potentially liberate Darth Sidious entirely. What did it mean to have a supermaster who could move freely? It meant that Darth Malthael himself would be perpetually exhausted trying to keep up. He had to destroy this puppet and uncover the secret behind its operation. A terrible chill emanated from Darth Malthael's eyes. He knew this battle would not be easy, for this puppet possessed power nearly equal to that of Darth Sidious. Darth Malthael raised his right hand, summoning the soul-seizing sword from behind him. The hideous hilt flew into his grasp, and under the touch of the Force, a pitch-black blade shot out instantly. The hilt was adorned with 18 black gemstones, each representing the ghost of an ancient Sith Lord imprisoned by Darth Malthael. The moment the soul-seizing sword was unsheathed, an eerie silence enveloped the surroundings, as if all normal sounds were completely cut off. Behind this silence, countless voices seemed to whisper. But if one listened closely, these whispers turned into cries of mourning and screams of pain. Anyone who listened too long would have their soul torn out, becoming one of these countless voices, screaming in endless torment. "It seems I underestimated you," Jan Droga, or rather Darth Sidious, finally spoke with a dignified tone. "You always manage to surprise me, Death Angel." "This time will be no different," Darth Malthael grinned. "I think so too," Jan Droga replied with a wry smile. In the next instant, The soul-seizing sword slashed towards Darth Sidious's chest, but was immediately blocked by an extremely powerful force lightning. Countless bolts of lightning erupted from Jean Droga's hands, containing immense power that could even repel the soul-seizing sword's attack. A frenzied confrontation ensued between the black lightsaber and the force lightning. The lightning formed an impenetrable net, while the soul-seizing sword attacked relentlessly with the power of death. The forces of death and darkness clashed endlessly. Yes, it was indeed Darth Sidious. Darth Malthael confirmed this once more, recognizing the familiar fighting style. Not using a lightsaber was a sign that Darth Sidious was truly serious. Like his master, Darth Plagueis, Sidious preferred to defeat his enemies with sheer force, scoffing at the use of a lightsaber, despite being a master of it. Darth Malthael soon realized that his death force could not penetrate Darth Sidious's force barrier. He recalled their previous confrontation on the planet Korriban, where he had managed to sap 10 years of vitality from Sidious using the unique characteristics of the Death Force. But now, it seemed Sidious had learned how to counteract the force of death. Chapter 666, Confrontation, Tens of Thousands of Light Years Away, Part 2. The battle between the two titans raged on, with lightning streaking across the sky and black swordlight clashing violently. The forces of death and darkness swirled around them, a testament to the ferocity of their struggle. This was a battle between the strongest in the galaxy. Hey! Your death force is nothing special, Dead Angel. It has an overwhelming presence, but lacks true destructive power. Maybe you should be making movies instead of squatting on the Dawn Star and playing rebel leader. Jean Droga taunted with a dark smile. Darth Malthael swung the soul-seizing sword in his hand violently, cutting through the air with a howl of ghosts and wolves. The lightning in Jean Droga's hand seemed to come alive, concentrating towards the soul-seizing sword, growing stronger with each passing moment. The constant clash gradually weakened Malthael's attack until it was completely blocked by another bolt of lightning. And you don't even have the courage to face me directly, Darth Sidious. Darth Malthael grinned. What is it that scares you so much? I have seen through the essence of your power. Your power comes from the same source as the immortal God King Darth Anderu. You have both found the other side of the original force. Heh. But unfortunately for you, I can control the power from the world of the Force. I don't need anyone's help to destroy you, Jean Droga declared. The lightning in his hand was relentless, transmitting devastating energy around Darth Malthael. It seems you have obtained the collection of the Jedi Order, Darth Malthael said coldly. But you can't get all of them, because the Jedi Order has already started planning to escape. It really is you. Jean Droga's expression turned ferocious. You actually managed to convince the Jedi Order to believe your words. It seems I underestimated the degree of depravity of that group of old fools. Although the process was not easy, in the end, you still haven't covered your tracks, Darth Sidious. What about your proud calculations? Why are there loopholes everywhere? Why don't you guess how many handles I have on you? Darth Malthael retorted. No matter what you have, this is the end. Jean Droga roared, and the force of the dark side, like a black hole, pressed overwhelmingly towards Malthael. However, in the boundless darkness, a speck of blood-red light suddenly appeared. A bloody lightning bolt pierced through the darkness, aiming directly at Jean Droga's chest. Jean Droga's reaction was swift. He had already started to move under the prediction of the Force before the lightning appeared. With a wave of his hand, the hilt of his lightsaber flew up and ignited, meeting the bloody lightning head-on. Click! The lightsabers, infused with the force of blood lightning, collided and then disintegrated into dust. But the aftermath of the lightning forced Jean Droga to retreat, taking several steps back to stabilize himself. Everything around them began to dissipate as both sides adjusted their stances, preparing for the next confrontation. Ha! Ha! Jean Droga suddenly laughed, his laughter distorted and maniacal. In the next second, he rushed towards Darth Malthael, the lightning in his hands crackling with energy, forming two massive power grids around him. Darth Malthael's eyes were filled with excitement as he swung the soul-seizing sword to meet him. At the moment of collision, Darth Malthael felt a strong sense of danger. Reacting instantly, he saw a yellow sword light shoot out suddenly, another lightsaber from John Droga. Swish! Darth Malthael stood motionless, the Reaper of Souls still in his hand. But his left rib bore a deep wound, from which countless tendrils of black mist continuously spewed, yet the injury refused to heal. His eyes were cold and piercing as he stared into the empty space before him. Yes, he had been struck by Darth Sidious and wounded by that sword, but he had also managed to seriously injure the puppet. To his surprise, even under such dire circumstances, the other party had still managed to escape. Darth Malthael exhaled a foul breath, concentrating a more potent force of death on the wound. Finally, he cleared away all the remaining dark energy of Darth Sidious, and the wound began to heal, enveloped by countless tendrils of black energy. However, his heart found no peace. There was no doubt, Darth Sidious had grown stronger. Just as he constantly calculated against the Jedi Order, Darth Sidious was doing the same. Despite the Jedi Knights realizing the danger in advance and relocating their younglings and collections, Darth Sidious still managed to seize part of them. Whether by intercepting them outside or storming the Jedi library, Sidious had the advantage of being on Coruscant, making his actions more convenient than those of Darth Malthael, who was on the planet Dawn. Darth Sidious had always possessed exceptional talent. Now, with part of the Jedi Order's collection, he would naturally integrate that knowledge with his own, further increasing his strength. At their level, becoming stronger wasn't about physical training, but understanding the Force. This recent battle was direct evidence of that. Even if the puppet could wield most of Darth Sidious's power, it was still just a puppet. Yet, it had managed to injure Darth Malthael and retreat. It wasn't hard to imagine that in a direct confrontation, Darth Malthael would likely fail. He might make Sidious pay a heavy price, but the gap between them, once narrow, had widened again. He needed more power. He needed to be stronger. Darth Malthael raised his hand and clenched his fist before him, as if he wanted to grasp the entire universe. Then he sheathed the soul-seizing sword, turned, and left. A gust of wind blew, and his figure vanished without a trace. For both him and Darth Sidious, the battle that took place in the model star sector, separated by tens of thousands of light years, was over. Next, their other forces would collide, a contest that could shake the entire galaxy. End of this chapter. Chapter 1667, New Confrontation. In the distance, Sakuis was running frantically, carrying the burly body of John Droga, not daring to stop. A LA-TIE I assault transport descended from the sky, and before it even fully landed, the hatch opened, and John Droga was quickly lifted inside. Quick! Prepare the back-to-tank immediately. Begin treatment at once. John Droga's mouth was full of blood, and though he couldn't move, he spoke fluently, not appearing as gravely injured as he seemed. "It's ready, Master," Sakuis replied. His body had shriveled significantly, leaving him much thinner. Despite having his vitality drained by Darth Malthael, he still managed to support John Droga and get him aboard. "The link can't last long. Once it's broken, he will die immediately. Treatment must start as soon as possible," John Droga insisted. "This man is very precious. He cannot be allowed to die." The LAI assault transport flew into a Cheer-class assault landing ship, hovering at high altitude, landing almost violently. On the hangar platform, a back-to-tank was already in place, with 5 medical droids standing by. John Droga was immediately placed into the tank, and treatment began. Before the back-to-liquid submerged John Droga's mouth, he glared at Sakuis and said viciously, "The dead angel was also seriously injured by me. As the Supreme Leader, he certainly can't continue to fight on the front lines. Seize this opportunity. Destroy the resistance on Dawn Planet." "Yes, my master," Sakuis replied respectfully. The back-to-liquid completely submerged John Droga, silencing him, but his eyes continued to stare fiercely at Sakuis, the meaning clear. "Cough! Cough!" Darth Sidious coughed violently. He put down the towel, revealing it was covered with black blood. He stood up and looked around. The surroundings were pitch black, but it was evident this was a grand hall, solemn, cold, and now, in the darkness, extremely somber. This was the meditation hall of the Jedi Temple. Once, Force-sensitive individuals from across the galaxy came here devoutly to receive the teachings of the Jedi Masters. It was a holy place that everyone in the galaxy yearned for. But now, The Jedi Temple had become the personal property of the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. Looking at everything around him, Darth Sidious laughed loudly. His laughter echoed in the empty temple. After laughing for a long time, Darth Sidious composed himself and walked out. Exiting the temple gate, he transformed back into the wise, brave, and determined Speaker of the Republic, Sheev Palpatine. The deputy speaker, Mas Amedda, stood beside a luxurious hovercar, waiting with a bowed posture. When he saw Palpatine emerge, he hurried to meet him. "Sir, do you think today's meeting needs to be postponed?" Palpatine waved his hand dismissively. "No need. Let's go." There are many voices of opposition in the Parliament, especially after our campaign against the Model Star sector began. They are very disturbed by the huge financial deficit caused by this operation. The councillors, led by Bail Organa, seem to be planning a large-scale protest. I think they may launch another impeachment. Mas Amedda said, handing a document to Palpatine in the car. However, Palpatine sneered and threw the document out of the window. He didn't speak, but just looked at the approaching Parliament building with cold eyes. Ha! Darth Sidious's insane laughter echoed through the void. Alas! An old sigh came from the darkness. To this day, in the end it is still. It has completed the mission of history, the Jedi Order. Master Yoda sat cross-legged on the ground, facing the endless darkness in front of him, only sighing. "Out already?" A voice emerged from the dark end of the corridor. Vaguely, 3 figures could be seen standing there. "Understand! I don't understand," Master Yoda muttered, shaking his head. He stood up, leaning heavily on his crutches, his movements weak and labored. "I should leave now." "Don't you want to see the end of the Galactic Republic?" asked the voice from the darkness. "It doesn't matter now," Master Yoda replied. "I no longer belong to this galaxy. I have already made my peace." "Where are you going?" the voice inquired. "Planet Dagobah," Master Yoda said. "The endless dark power left by the dead angel is there." With that, he turned to leave. After taking a few steps, he paused and asked, "Aren't you going to see him? The dead angel?" There was a moment of silence from the dark side. Then a young female voice responded, "He's not qualified yet, not right now." In the Model Star area, on the outer orbit of Anji's planet, the flagship of the Galactic Republic Expeditionary Fleet, the Commander-class dreadnought Tag, floated silently. Sakuis walked briskly onto the bridge. He had been affected by the dead angel, and his once robust frame was now gaunt, his demeanor even more menacing. He approached Major General Cassio Tag, the Commander-in-Chief, and said coldly, "The dead angel has been injured. This is a rare opportunity. Launch an attack immediately." Cassio Tag was displeased with Sakuis's attitude, but didn't dare to offend him. He frowned and said, "Now I'm going all out." "You should know where this instruction came from," Sakuis interrupted him sharply. "Yes, I understand." Cassio Tag quickly stood at attention and saluted. Sakuis nodded, said nothing more, and turned to leave. Cassio Tag exhaled deeply and turned to his adjutant, Laszlo Dorit. "After the full-scale attack started, how is the battle progressing?" "The battlefield is chaotic, and the reports are mixed. Especially after several legions in the north were severely damaged by the dead angel, our offensive has been significantly affected. Judging from the feedback we've received so far, I think it will be difficult for us to capture the capital area of planet Anji in the short term," Laszlo Dorit replied, shaking his head. "This is an instruction from Coruscant. If we can't achieve significant results, the consequences will be dire," Cassio Tag said. "Our fleet still has an absolute advantage. I think we should focus on the space battlefield," Laszlo Dorit suggested. "I recommend we adjust the fleet's deployment and temporarily suspend landing operations. The fleet's main mission should be to defeat the separatist forces in space." "Are you suggesting we play hide-and-seek with those spaceships again?" Cassio Tag's face turned cold. "And what about the ground battlefield?" "We should allow our ground forces to regroup, abandon some of the less critical peripheral battlefields, and concentrate on a few of the largest landing areas. This way, the air support for these landing areas can be more focused," Laszlo Dorit explained. As they were discussing, the head of the intelligence department approached and said to Cassio Tag, "General, we have intercepted a set of encrypted messages from the separatists." End of this chapter. Chapter 1668, Contradictions. Strange encrypted information? How strange. Cassio Tag was in a foul mood as he took the file and opened his personal terminal to check it. Immediately, the content of the document made him frown. The document was a reinforcement report indicating that the Principality of Dawn was continuously smuggling reinforcements to the Anji galaxy through a hyperspace channel codenamed H. According to the plan detailed inside, the Principality of Dawn intended to hold back the Republic Expeditionary Force fleet in the Anji galaxy, even if it meant the complete destruction of the planet Anji. Dawnstar planned to accelerate its efforts and continuously deliver T-virus biological weapons to Anji, completely disrupting the ground war. This would force the Galactic Republic to initiate orbital bombardment on Anji, ultimately leading to the planet's destruction. At the end of the report, a term caught Cassio Tag's attention: T-Veronica virus. The significance of this information lay in two extremely valuable pieces: the secret channel codenamed H and the mysterious T-Veronica. The intelligence department of the Expeditionary Force had appended their opinions. Although they were unsure what Veronica meant, the prefix T suggested a connection to the T-virus. The Ministry of Intelligence speculated that this might be an improved version of the T-virus, with Veronica possibly being a commemorative term, perhaps the founder's name or someone important to them. Regardless, the appearance of this term indicated a significant threat. It was clear that the Separatists were attempting a comeback through this so-called T-Veronica. In other words, separatism is now pinning its hopes on this biological weapon, Cassio Tag said, stroking his chin thoughtfully. If they manage to turn the entire planet Anji into a sea of biological weapons, that's really bad news for us. We might have no choice but to blow up the planet Anji in the end. Adjutant Laszlo Dolittle frowned. Maybe the situation isn't that dire. We can strengthen the blockade to prevent them from sending biological weapons. There's already evidence of this. We've shot down 5 spaceships recently, all smuggling biological weapons, an intelligence official reported. We've cleared the hangar of the Tokaga Jaeger-class battlecruiser and are conducting anatomical tests on these biological weapons. Any results? Laszlo Dolittle asked quickly. We have some preliminary findings. The DNA fragments we've analyzed are quite different from the T-virus biological weapons we've encountered before. We're requesting data from the Republic Academy of Biological Sciences for a comparison with the original T-virus analysis, the intelligence official explained. So, given the current situation, delays are inevitable. If the Separatists manage to send more biological weapons to Anji, we might indeed have to destroy the planet, Cassio Tag concluded. Laszlo Dolittle shook his head. No, General. I think this information is somewhat exaggerated. The T-virus biological weapon is still no match for our clone army. We just need to fight steadily, concentrate on 4 to 5 landing sites, and protect the ground spaceport we occupy. No matter what methods the Separatists use, they can't shake our position. Steady and steady all day long. Have you forgotten our situation? Have you forgotten what happened in the Kadi region? Cassio Tag's anxiety flared, his desire to win and fear of losing making him restless. Don't forget that biological weapons can change the tide of war in an instant. Weapons are contagious. If everyone on planet Anji becomes a T-virus biological weapon, our plan will fail completely. Laszlo Dorit exclaimed, his voice tinged with anxiety. What happened in the Kadi region was due to our failure to concentrate our troops. Laszlo Dorit, usually composed, raised his voice uncharacteristically. A single legion's strength is insufficient to attack a country that once had 150 troops and a city with a population of 10,000. The result scattered forces, ultimately destroyed by biological weapons one by one. If we concentrate our forces, our powerful firepower will prevent those biological weapons from even getting close. So, you're just trying to prove me wrong? You've been advocating your cautious tactics. Are you trying to show that you, a captain with over 30 years in the army, are stronger than me? Cassio Tag retorted angrily. No, General, I definitely didn't mean that. Laszlo Dolittle hurriedly explained. He was just a veteran who had participated in Stark's hyperspace war, a mere existence that Cassio Tag could crush with a flick of his finger. Then tell me, what should we do about these biological weapons? Cassio Tag demanded. I don't think we need to go there specifically. Laszlo Dolittle began, but faltered under Cassio Tag's cold gaze. He lowered his head to avoid eye contact and continued, "Give me a month, and I will take down the capital area of planet Anji. 1 month? In 1 month, planet Anji will be completely overrun by biological weapons. How many people are there on the planet now? 6 billion or more." Cassio Tag exclaimed. "That's just 6 billion zombies." Cassio Tag sighed, shaking his head. "Mr. Dolittle, you are completely unprepared for potential dangers. In the military academy, they teach that ignoring potential threats can lead to a painful price." "Then what should we do?" Laszlo Dolittle asked, his voice subdued. He had no other choice but to seek guidance. Deploy part of the warships to conduct thorough patrols of the Anji galaxy. Ensure that the Separatists cannot send more viruses to planet Anji. Simultaneously, do your best to find the hyperspace channel codenamed H, Cassio Tag instructed. At the same time, ground troops should maintain the current offensive and continue to attack without stopping. Laszlo Dolittle's thoughts of regrouping were silenced. He simply responded, "I obey." Thank you for the 1,500 starting coins rewarded by Morning Wuhuaxia. Chapter 1669, Entering Longtan Alone. Captain Laszlo Dolittle was right. The real cause of Cassio Tag's anxiety was not biological weapons, but the fear brought about by his feeling that he could not win. The message from Coruscant had been very clear. Victory must be achieved as soon as possible. Even if the Principality of Dawn could not be defeated, it was necessary to gain a firm foothold in the model sector and create conditions for future operations. Moreover, Saquis had personally come to deliver a message, which added immense pressure on Cassio Tag. After all, they had dealt with the most difficult opponent, the Dead Angel, and had been given a powerful fleet of unprecedented scale. It would be unreasonable not to win. In Cassio Tag's mind, everything that might interfere with his road to victory had to be eliminated. He had ordered the army to march in 17 routes to besiege the capital area of the planet Anji. Despite many difficulties and the loss of 2 legions to the Dead Angel on the northern battlefield, the front line was still advancing steadily. This steady progress was what Cassio Tag needed to hold on to the most. He believed that as long as he continued on this path, victory would eventually come. Another way? Perhaps it would be closer. Perhaps the damage would be smaller. But Cassio Tag didn't want to take that risk. Another way might lead to failure. Laszlo Dolittle's plan of regrouping, gathering heavy forces to break through in a few directions and fighting steadily was not without merit. However, Cassio Tag looked down on this mere veteran. If he overturned his plan and adopted Dolittle's, wouldn't that be a slap in the face? Moreover, if the attack stopped to redeploy, it might give Anji Planet a respite. What if biological weapons really spread all over the world? He didn't know. Even though the losses were heavy and he was uncomfortable, he chose to persevere. In such a situation, persistence was actually the easiest choice. In the final analysis, what Cassio Tag was worried about was not biological weapons, but all possible variables. He had to completely remove every variable. As mentioned before, persistence is the easiest choice. It is also a choice often made when one is at a loss, so it was no surprise that Cassio Tag made such a choice. He ordered the ground troops to continue attacking the capital area of Anji Star at the cost of huge losses, and allocated some warships to solve the problem of biological weapons that might be smuggled in. Only in this way could he think that the path he chose, though difficult, was gradually moving forward on the road to victory. In the unmanned galaxy T6652U7X8849L, an extremely large advance base built by the Galactic Republic and the Kuat Power shipyard to attack the model sector, James Bond, wearing the uniform of a maintenance engineer, looked through the porthole of the space station at the enormous ring in the distance. The middle of this super-large ring, with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers, looked like a mirror from his current distance. But in fact, this was the result of powerful hyperspace fluctuations distorting the light of stars. If you took a spaceship to the middle of the ring, you would only see empty space. However, looking at the starry sky through this area, it seemed as if there was a trace of space, distorted and blurred. At this moment, more than 30 transport ships, under the escort of a Hunter-class battlecruiser, were coming to the center of the circle to organize and assemble. A moment later, the transport fleet activated the hyperspace engine, and as it was activated, a wave of strong ripples suddenly appeared in the center. At the center of the massive ring, the hyperspace engine had already propelled the spaceships into hyperspace. These ships, stabilized by the hyperspace stabilizer, navigated the unstable channel directly to the model star area. Whether transport ships or battleships, all were colossal vessels, each over a kilometer in length. Only such large ships possessed hyperspace E-9s powerful enough to traverse the entire route in one jump. Smaller vessels would lack the capability to make multiple jumps through the channel. James Bond's lips curled into a slight smile, but his expression quickly shifted to one of awe and admiration. This is actually a military base. A super large military base. I've never seen a fleet of this magnitude, he exclaimed. Indeed, more than 100 Jaeger-class battlecruisers were gathered, forming an imposing fleet. If these fleets advanced further into the model sector, the sector's defenses would likely crumble under the sheer number of Republic warships. But James Bond knew it wasn't that simple. Since he began his observations, the hyperspace stabilizer had dispatched 3 waves of spaceships, all transport fleets. This indicated that the ongoing war in the model star area required substantial supplies to sustain. This revelation provided a wealth of information. Before Bond could delve deeper into his thoughts, a person dressed as a supervisor approached him and whispered, "Enough! Keep a low profile. Don't keep staring at the fleet. You'll be suspected of being a spy." The supervisor then pretended to show Bond data on a personal terminal pad. Bond glanced at the supervisor, uncertain if this was the same person he had previously negotiated with, known as the Dark Broker. Shaking his head, Bond feigned disappointment and said, "It's too spectacular. But you want to sell my tractor beam generator to the military? Isn't that courting death?" "It's Kuat who wants to use it, not the military. Don't worry. Everything here was built by Kuat Power Dock," the supervisor replied. "How does Kuat Power Dock have the authority to build a complete military base? Isn't that the responsibility of the Republic's Ministry of Engineering?" Bond questioned. "There's no precedent in our Republic for companies to intervene in military affairs." "You shouldn't ask questions you don't need answers to," the supervisor said sternly. "All right, you've seen it now. The scale of construction here can easily consume all the tractor beams you can provide. You have your way, and I have mine. I can offer it to Kuat Power Shipyard at a price slightly above market value, and they'll be thrilled. You know, to build this place and organize the fleet, Kuat Power Shipyard has nearly pawned off everything they own." "I see. As long as it's not linked to the military, it's fine," Bond conceded. "If you have no other questions, let's complete the transaction as soon as we get back. This is a big deal worth several million credit points," the supervisor said. The information was staggering. The Kuat Power Shipyard had built the base and organized the fleet? Bond narrowed his eyes and suddenly asked, "I do have a question. You brought me here quietly, right? I shouldn't be on any official list, should I?" Chapter 1670, Dawn Galaxy. James Bond emerged from a utility room, straightening his clothes and looking quite composed. He was now dressed in the red uniform of a supervisor, with a name tag on his chest that read Thomas Weeken. However, his appearance remained unchanged. The procedure Nova had taken him through was a semi-permanent plastic surgery, meaning that reverting to his original look would be a complex process. This was necessary to avoid repeated scans when entering this galaxy. Nova had done an excellent job in securing his new identity and appearance, as the area was predominantly populated by Kadi people. Bond had just conducted a brief interrogation with the real supervisor and gathered some information. This was the unmanned galaxy designated T652U7X8849L. Unmanned galaxies typically have numerical designations rather than names. However, after the Kuat Power Dockyard began constructing a military base here, they named it the Dawn Galaxy, with the name of the galaxy corresponding to the Dawn planet, revealing their grand ambitions. James Bond merely sneered at this, thinking it was a pipe dream, and continued with his mission. The Thomas Weeken who brought him here was not the dark broker he had negotiated with previously, but an agent working under him. This agent had colluded with the dark brokers, finding opportunities to make money within his jurisdiction, and then collaborated to make huge profits which they shared. There were many agents like him under the dark broker, making the broker's influence extensive and pervasive. In the construction project of the Dawn Galaxy, Thomas Weeken was responsible for recruiting some engineering components. At this time, agents under the Military Intelligence Department of the Duchy of Dawn had already started casting a net to gather information, which led them to the dark broker. Contacting this person was not easy, as such individuals typically operated within their own circles. Unless they initiated contact, it was difficult for ordinary people to meet them, let alone establish a connection. Enter Yuri Orlov, also known as Santa Claus. Since breaking away from the Fourth Civilization and going solo, Yuri's business had grown significantly, and he had connections across various sectors. He also resold goods everywhere, inevitably crossing paths with the dark broker. According to Yuri, he first met the dark broker during a business deal involving the smuggling of 100,000 tons of explosive gas. The dark broker had asked where he obtained so much blaster gas, to which Yuri replied that he liked to shoot guns and had saved up a bit more. This led to a business relationship between them. Through Yuri Orlov's introduction, the intelligence personnel of the Principality of Dawn managed to establish contact with the dark broker. The broker learned that they could provide a batch of tractor beam generators that were both cheap and stable in performance, guaranteed not to explode for at least 3 months. This information led them to Thomas Weeken. Thomas Weeken mentioned that he needed 100 tractor beam generators, with a budget of about 80% of the market price. This created a lucrative business opportunity with several million credit points in profit. Weeken's quotation to Kuat was at the market price, allowing him to pocket 20% of the purchase price. Nova's supply bid was 20% below the market price, so the remaining 60% of the purchase price went into the dark broker's pocket, which he would then split with Nova. As a result, Kuat Power Dockyard received a batch of refurbished junk at market price, but at least it was usable enough to make a deal. Such practices were not uncommon in the current Galactic Republic. The question remained, how would this relationship end? Between Yuri Orlov and the dark broker, the aftermath of the current situation is a matter for the Military Intelligence Department to consider. For now, James Bond's primary concern is how to relay the information. Fortunately, this challenge seems manageable, as Bond has discovered that the surveillance in the entire Dawn Galaxy is stringent on the outside but lax on the inside. The Galactic Republic's Intelligence Department handles the outer perimeter, ensuring rigorous scrutiny, while the internal surveillance is managed by the Kuat Power Shipyard's Intelligence Department. The reliability of a corporate intelligence department is, of course, questionable. James Bond cautiously explored the area and realized that no one was paying attention to him. This gave him the opportunity to initiate his plan. His main objective was to disseminate the information, inform Nova, Tosh, and others waiting outside about their location, and then find a way to bring them into the galaxy. Bond understood that he couldn't destroy such a massive interstellar base and the enormous ring-shaped device on his own. He first identified his role, which involved the procurement and maintenance of engineering construction equipment. However, the actual recruitment and external liaison were handled by another specialist. This external liaison officer, who was not involved in any specific activities within the Dawn Galaxy, knew the least and was usually confined to the reception area in the Galaxy spaceport. This ensured that no sensitive information would be leaked during external communications. Thomas Weeken had also involved the liaison officer, but according to Thomas, he had only given the liaison officer 10,000 credits, exploiting the officer's ignorance. This led Bond to believe that he might be able to exploit this liaison officer as a potential weak link. However, before proceeding, Bond needed to take further action. Without the specific coordinates of the Dawn Galaxy, he couldn't even begin to spread the news. Typically, the navigation coordinates of a planet are directly input into the navigation computer. When navigation equipment is manufactured, an application is made to the Galactic Republic Galaxy Management Department, which then provides a directory of galaxy navigation coordinates. This directory is downloaded and used, but the manufacturer does not know how these coordinates are derived or what the standards are. Consequently, they cannot navigate to galaxies not listed in this directory. In the black market, the coordinates of uncharted or unmanned galaxies are highly sought after, as many people use them to establish secret bases. As a side note, before Count Dooku left the Jedi Order, he quietly deleted the coordinates of more than 30 galaxies from the Milky Way star map in the Jedi Library and took these coordinates with him. As a result, the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Order were sometimes unaware of the existence of these galaxies. Given this system, Bond realized he couldn't determine the coordinates of the Dawn Galaxy with the resources at his disposal. He needed to find pre-existing coordinates, such as those stored in the spaceships docked at the spaceport. Chapter 1671, Breakthrough. Hey, buddy. James Bond patted Thomas Wicken's face, waking him from his drowsy sleep. Ah, you. Thomas Wicken jolted awake, and upon recognizing the person before him, he pleaded, "Please let me go. I just wanted to make a little money. I've told you everything I know. I don't know anything else." "Small money?" James Bond sneered. "You can make enough to buy at least one high-end frigate just by changing hands. If that's considered small money, then what about us who are on a salary?" My lord, I'm willing to give you all the money. It's a lot. Just please let me go." Thomas continued to beg for mercy. "Did you know? The Dawn Galaxy is very busy right now, and this utility room is filled with maintenance equipment for holographic game consoles. But from my observations, the people who work here are busy all day, and most of their rest time is spent drinking. They get drunk, rest, and then wake up the next day to more work. They don't have time for much entertainment, and no one will smash the game consoles. So, this is basically Kuat Power Dockyard's way of promoting employee benefits," James Bond explained with a smile. Thomas Wicken nodded blankly. "Look, Kuat Power Dockyard will definitely publicize that they even prepare game consoles for employees. But in reality, the work pressure is immense, and there's a lot of overtime. Who has the energy to play games?" James Bond continued. "So if I leave you here, your only outcome is to slowly starve to death. Believe me, it's not a pleasant experience, because you may spend at least a week tormented by hunger. Don't worry, I'll at least give you water." Thomas began to shake his head violently. "No, I'll tell you whatever you want. I'll take you out right away. Just please let me go." James Bond took out a tube of nutritional supplements from his pocket, shook it, and said, "This one tastes like binto fruit. I've tried a lot of flavors, and I still think the taste of binto fruit is the most comfortable. It's slightly sweet, but after swallowing, it has a refreshing sour taste, and the aftertaste in the throat is sweet again." Thomas swallowed hard. He hadn't eaten for most of the day. James Bond immediately put away the nutritional supplements. "Look, it's been less than a day. There are still 9 days before you really starve to death." Thomas struggled violently. "Please give me something to eat. I'll tell you anything you want. Anything." James Bond's face suddenly turned cold. "Tell me the coordinates of this galaxy." Thomas Wicken was stunned for a moment, then said with a mournful face, "I don't know." James Bond stood up and said, "Then I'll come back at this time tomorrow. Maybe one more day will make your memory clearer." As he spoke, he walked out without any hesitation. Wait a minute. I know where the coordinates are," Thomas shouted. James Bond turned his head and said coldly, "You have 5 seconds. Otherwise, see you tomorrow." "Navigator Bourne. He knows the coordinates, and I know how to get him to tell you," Thomas said. "Go on," James Bond said, squatting in front of Thomas. "Bourne, this guy is a navigator. He's navigating one of the transport lines, and he loves to gamble. Very much." Thomas explained. "So he owes you money?" James Bond asked. "No, I owe him more than 8,000 credits," Thomas admitted. James Bond's expression turned cold again, and he stood up to leave. "Wait a minute. Bourne is hot-tempered. If you can make him lose big, he'll put anything on the gambling table. And since I owe him money, just go to him and tell him to help me pay it back. He won't reject you," Thomas said hastily. A satisfied smile appeared on the corner of James Bond's mouth. He then dropped a bottle of water. "Drink, this is your food for today." If you need to relieve yourself, you can use the bottle. No, I want to eat. I need nutritional supplements. Thomas was alone, on the verge of tears. Of course, you won't be eligible to eat until I get in. Ouch with Bourne. James Bond sneered as he walked out. Looks like I won again, James Bond said with a smile, putting down the cards in his hand. Plus 23. Ha! Take it all! Bastard! A curly-haired middle-aged man, who looked somewhat well off, angrily slammed the machine in his hand onto the table. Reluctantly, he grabbed a handful of money and threw it into a triangular jar in the center of the table. James Bond waited for the other 3 players to throw their money into the jar before leaning over to take it. He poured all the money out in front of him, counting it with a smug expression. They were playing a card game called Sabak, which is similar to a complicated version of blackjack. The goal of the game is to get the points in your hand as close to 23 as possible, with both positive and negative numbers being acceptable. Whoever is closest wins. This is considered a small game. The losers of each hand drop money into the Sabak pot in the middle of the table. When someone completes a special combination or directly reaches 23 points, they win all the money in the pot, ending the big game. The rules are very complicated, so I won't go into more detail. In the original plot, Han Solo used this card game to win the Millennium Falcon from Lando Calrissian. James Bond counted his winnings, totaling more than 40,000 credits, a substantial sum. It had been 3 days since he contacted Bourne. Thomas Weekend hadn't lied. He really approached Bourne under the pretext of repaying a debt. As luck would have it, Bourne was at the table at the time. So, James Bond made a few bets with him. For top agents like James Bond, their mastery of micro-expressions, psychology, and game situation calculations make them top players, easily beating skilled workers. These people are busy all day and come to drink and gamble at night before going home to sleep. They aren't serious gamers, making James Bond invincible. For the next 2 days, James Bond checked the situation during the day and gambled with Bourne at night. He let Bourne win initially, then lose, and finally took it all, almost emptying Bourne's pockets. Okay, I have more than a dozen machines to overhaul tomorrow, so I'm going home to sleep, James Bond said, waving his hand as he walked outside. One more round. Bourne roared from behind. No, I'm too tired. I'm going home. James Bond shook his head and continued walking out. I'll bet my spaceship, Bourne shouted. The game will be quick. It won't waste too much time. James Bond finally stopped and turned around. What is your spaceship? He asked. A DC-9 cargo ship. It's not the best, but it's enough to win all your money back, Bourne said loudly. Oh, looks like you're sure you'll win? James Bond sneered, walking back and sitting at the poker table again. No one noticed that, as he pulled the stool away, he discreetly changed a card. Then, just the 2 of us, James Bond said, taking out the money he had just won and shaking it in front of Bourne's red eyes. He threw all the money into the Sabak jar in the middle of the table. Bourne also took out a launcher for the spaceship, hesitated for a moment, and then threw it into the jar as well. Chapter 1672, The Disaster in the Dawn Galaxy, Part 1. Draw the cards. Bourne roared angrily, revealing his hand, which totaled exactly 22. In a game like Sabaka, only a positive 23 can take all, equivalent to a straight flush of clubs. However, James Bond turned over his cards with a smile, and it was exactly 23. This was equivalent to his first straight flush of spades. This is impossible, Bourne shouted in disbelief. Nothing is impossible, Mr. Bourne. I'm willing to take the bet, James Bond replied, pulling the Sabaka jar, filled with coins, and the spaceship launcher in the middle towards him with one hand. As everyone focused on the jar, containing a huge sum equivalent to 100,000 credits, James Bond discreetly shuffled the cards he had just changed back into the deck. You must have cheated. Bourne still couldn't believe it. This is only the first game. How could you get 23 points? Impossible. But James Bond paid him no mind. He grabbed all the money in the jar and began tossing it towards the people around him. Come on, all the expenses tonight are on me. Ha ha! He laughed while throwing money. The crowd went wild. In this bar, there were workers who came to have a few drinks and play small card games. Seizing this opportunity, James Bond quietly slipped away from the crowd and ran towards the spaceport. Catch him! Bourne never took his eyes off James Bond. Seeing him make a run for it, he immediately yelled, and his brothers chased after him. James Bond had already figured out where Bourne's spacecraft was and ran directly towards the depths of the spaceport. Over the past 2 days, he had investigated everything about Bourne, including his spaceship, the cash he carried, his personality, his playing style, and even some of his interpersonal relationships. Being targeted by such a top agent, ordinary people seemed transparent. As he ran, several people rushed towards him, trying to stop him. He jumped up, delivering a flying kick to one person, knocking them down. Another person was taken down with a back throw, and a third person, who wielded a fork, had it snatched away by Bond's backhand and plunged into their shoulder with a swift motion. Ah! The man covered his shoulder in pain and screamed. I'm sorry, James Bond said, straightening his clothes before making the man pass out from the pain. After the fight, Bond appeared as if nothing had happened, his clothes still neat. Although he looked like a native of Kadi after plastic surgery, his inner charm and demeanor remained intact. As an agent, combat ability was secondary. IQ and EQ were paramount. With his excellent eloquence and charm, he could easily extract the information he needed from his targets. When he reached Bourne's DC-9 cargo ship, he noticed a label pasted on the hatch of the spaceship. He tore it off, put it in his pocket, then entered the cockpit and started the hyperspace engine of the spaceship. He inserted a small recorder and began recording the hyperspace course data of the last few voyages. He had come here completely empty-handed and had acquired the recorder only after arriving. Remarkably, he had only been in this completely unfamiliar military base for 3 days. Moreover, there were thousands of spaceships in this spaceport, and those with the qualifications and data to repeatedly enter and exit the Dawn Galaxy were less than 1/10. But now, James Bond had achieved his purpose. At this time, Bourne had brought several people armed with wooden sticks and folded stools from the bar, rushing over aggressively. Go in and hold him. I want to break this bastard's hand, he shouted. However, before he could enter the hatch, something was thrown at him head-on. Bourne instinctively caught it, only to realize it was the starter of his spaceship. He saw James Bond sitting leisurely at the door, smiling kindly. Just kidding. I don't know how to fly a spaceship, Bond said. You. Bourne looked at the starter in his hand, then at James Bond, momentarily stunned. Bond walked over, patted him on the shoulder, slipped a few credits into his hand, and said in a low voice, Actually, I'm here to pay you back for Thomas Weekend. After saying this, Bond waved his hand nonchalantly and walked away. Bourne and his men stood frozen in place, transfixed. Back at his temporary residence, James Bond exported the data of the hyperspace channel to form coordinates. He then took out the label he had torn off earlier and examined it carefully. The label was a delivery note, casually affixed by the delivery person. It contained the identification code of a batch of goods, the code of the spacecraft, and the identification code of this voyage. The next step was straightforward. James Bond found a liaison connected to Thomas Weekend and easily convinced him. The poor guy had no idea how extensive Thomas Weekend's business was and had only been given 10,000 credits. Bond told him about the situation and successfully persuaded the contact with the promise of half the profit. He instructed the liaison officer to find a place with convenient communication after leaving the Dawn Galaxy, turn on the communicator, insert the chip, and remove it after a minute. This would result in half the profits of several million credits. For now, he prepaid tens of thousands of credits. If this liaison officer could be bought for 10,000 credits, it meant he was just a greedy villain who had been pulled into the game by Thomas Weekend long ago. Reporting him would require taking him in, which wasn't worth the effort. This saved Bond a lot of trouble. As for James Bond, he had no intention of leaving. Getting the location of the Dawn Galaxy was only the beginning. Knowing where it was the first step. The most important task was destroying that huge ring-shaped device. That was the real key. So, it was time to meet the elusive Thomas Weekend again. James Bond easily bypassed all the monitoring and walked towards the unknown warehouse. It should be much more convenient to negotiate terms now. End of this chapter. Chapter 1673, The Disaster in the Dawn Galaxy, Part 2. At the same time, in an unknown, uninhabited galaxy within the core circle of the Milky Way, a Protoss shuttle was parked silently amidst an asteroid belt. Beside the Protoss shuttle, an Astro-class frigate was also stationed. Unlike the typical black-painted frigates, this one boasted a beautiful blue gradient paint. There is news. Chao Lianhua, the head of the Electronic Intelligence Department of the Principality of Dawn, announced as she operated quickly within the cramped, electronics-filled interior of the Astro-class frigate. From Mo-07? Nova, who was waiting nearby, asked. "Oh, I thought you could read my mind directly," Chao Lianhua replied with a smile. "It's too noisy. I've developed a habit of ignoring all the unnecessary sounds I hear in my head when I'm relaxed," Nova explained, waving her hand dismissively. Chao Lianhua swiped her hand across a screen, transmitting a piece of data to the universal tool on Nova's wrist. "He also sent a code for cargo transportation. I'll need to crack it later." Nova examined the data on her universal tool. This is an encrypted password. Once analyzed, it will reveal a set of coordinates. "It seems he found it. Thanks to Voodoo," Gabriel Tosh commented from the side. "We should start now." The voice of the Dark Templar Olakon echoed in everyone's minds. "Don't rush. We need to look at another piece of data first," the female Dark Templar Sola A interjected. "She's right. We can indeed use this information," Chao Lianhua agreed. "If you can calm down, I might be able to get it done in half an hour. Okay?" Neither of the Dark Templars responded. Nova and Tosh exchanged glances and remained silent, watching Chao Lianhua work busily between several screens. About 10 minutes later, Chao Lianhua tapped the keyboard excitedly. "It's done!" "Done what?" Nova asked. "This is a set of freight codes. I discovered that these codes are currently used by the Quat power dock. This means the goods transported by these spaceships were sent by Quat and haven't even been altered," Chao Lianhua explained. "As for why the Quat power dock is involved, that's a question for you to consider. I've already hacked into their cargo system." "Can you do what?" Gabriel Tosh inquired. "Based on these codes, I forged several sets of codes. These codes will make the defense forces think we are legitimate," Chao Lianhua said. "In other words, we don't need to rely on the invisibility capabilities of the Astro-class or Protoss shuttles. We can directly enter that mysterious galaxy?" Nova asked. "No one will know our actions," Tosh said with a grin that was more unsettling than reassuring. "What are we waiting for?" Chao Lianhua copied the data into her universal tool and stood up. "Let's go and send the tractor beam generator in." Half a day later, at a checkpoint on the outskirts of the Dawn Galaxy, a hyperspace blocker intercepted all spacecraft attempting to enter the galaxy via hyperspace jumps. After being forced out of hyperspace, the ships were scanned and checked before being allowed to proceed. The checkpoint was guarded by 3 Jaeger-class battlecruisers and 10 Architects-class light cruisers, with dozens of black-holed gun barrels always ready to deter any unreasonable actions. At this time, a very inconspicuous Oro-class cargo ship emerged from hyperspace. A Galactic Republic V-19 fighter jet immediately approached. "Oro-class ship, please lower your shields and accept the scan," the fighter pilot instructed. "No problem," Chao Lianhua responded, wearing a peaked cap and chewing bubblegum nonchalantly. "Thank you for your cooperation. Well, the cargo you are transporting is a tractor beam generator and 3 passengers. Are you sure?" "Confirmed. Here is our code." Super Lotus blew a bubble and popped it with a snap. "Okay, the code checks out. You can stay for up to 2 days." The V-19 fighter relayed this information before turning around and flying away. "Hehe, it seems the Galactic Republic's detectors aren't completely oblivious to you, Protoss," Nova remarked to the empty air beside her. "It doesn't happen all the time." Olakon's deep voice responded. "Let's go! It's time to make a fuss!" Super Lotus shouted, pressing a button. The spacecraft instantly entered hyperspace, disappearing into the vast expanse of space. At the Dawn Galaxy military base, in the spaceport's living and leisure area, James Bond was leisurely enjoying a piece of fresh fruit at a table in the corner. Beside him were several tubes of nutritional supplements in different flavors and a bottle of low-alcohol fruit wine. For the workers in the Dawn Galaxy, this was already the most extravagant meal. Thomas Weekend sat across from him, devouring a piece of fruit as if he hadn't eaten in days. In fact, he had been hungry for several days. "Thanks to you, we have arrived. Well done, Agent 07, Nova's voice suddenly echoed in James Bond's mind. "I must say, telepathy is quite a useful skill," James Bond replied with a slight smile, conveying the thought from his shallow consciousness. "What is your plan?" Tosh's voice also appeared in his mind. "First, we create a power outage. I need to understand the emergency measures of the ring device. Additionally, I'm very interested in the response of the quarter power dock," James Bond replied. "This battle to invade the model sector was initiated by the Kuat Power Shipyard?" Nova inquired. "That's correct. If we just create a power outage, it will undoubtedly alert the enemy and cause them to strengthen their guard. I suspect there might be a dark Jedi here," Nova said. "If we don't alert them, I don't think a few people can completely destroy this device. I checked the surrounding area and found that the energy level of this device is quite impressive, and the guards are extremely strict. Although you are very powerful, escaping from the guards in the core area would be difficult." James Bond shook his head. "Super Lotus? All right, our lady hacker says the device draws power directly from the stars. If we can disrupt the balance, a brief blackout caused by an explosion should be possible," Nova's voice came through. "And then?" Tosh asked, clearly agreeing with the plan. "The high-level command of the quarter power shipyard here is currently very tense. Although I haven't met them in person, this tension is evident in all aspects of life and work in this galaxy," James Bond said. "When people are extremely tense, they tend to act irrationally. Therefore, I plan to give them a gentle push." "Navarash, I understand." The gloomy voice of the Dark Templar Ola Khan resonated in his mind. "There will be a power outage here." End of this chapter. Chapter 1674, The Wrath of Court. With a resounding crash, a precious sculpture shattered on the ground. Onana Court's roar echoed throughout the entire command center. "I just want to know why the planet Anji hasn't been taken down yet. Respected Court of Court, please calm down. Planet Anji is the capital of the Mater sector. The Separatists will definitely place great importance on it. Stubborn resistance is to be expected." A military staff officer quickly explained. "Important? You assured me this was a sneak attack. The Separatists never dreamed that our fleet would suddenly descend on planet Anji. You idiots! If it was a sneak attack, then how have the Separatists managed to resist my fleet for half a month?" Onana Court bellowed, pointing accusingly at the officer. Everyone exchanged bewildered glances, unable to explain the situation. Even Lila Blissex, who was considered the second in command at Court Power Dock, sat with her legs crossed, deep in thought, her expression grim. There was so much at stake in this battle, and she was desperate for a victory. A win would position her favorably between the Kuat Power Dockyard and the Republic Navy, potentially allowing her to influence the power core of the Kuat Power Dock through the high-ranking Dun Wessex. But now, the battle had dragged on, and they hadn't even achieved the first strategic goal, occupying the Anji galaxy as a forward base. Cassio Tag had confidently sworn that he could capture planet Anji within 3 days, a claim that the Supreme Strategic Command of the Galactic Republic had deemed reasonable. The hyperspace route to the model star area was originally unstable, forcibly opened by Master Yoda. Over a year had passed since then, and the route had naturally become chaotic again. No one expected the Galactic Republic to send hundreds of warships through this channel. Moreover, hundreds of warships besieging a planet that wasn't fortified like Eliadu or Yagodur seemed like an easy task. Anji was just an ordinary planet with a population of over 6 billion and a planetary shield that wasn't the highest level. How could such a planet resist hundreds of battleships? Yet, they had managed to hold out. Shortly after the attack began, a distress signal was sent. Cassio Tag and his team acted decisively to stabilize their position, but progress remained stagnant. They were still blocked from planet Anji, and this stalemate had lasted for half a month. Why was this happening? Leela Blissex repeatedly asked herself this question. Based on her understanding of war, she couldn't fathom any other factors beyond military strength and industry that could explain the situation. She glanced at Onana Court, who was still raging in the command center, with a mix of pity and contempt. A sneer formed on her lips. At least, she thought, Onana Court would bear the brunt of the blame. I just want to know what to do now. How can I get into the Dawn Star? Is it too much to ask for an answer? Onana Court roared at the hundreds of officers and staff around her, but no one could provide a solution. Capture the Dawn Star? What are you thinking? We can't even find the way to the Dawn Star. The route from the Angie Galaxy to the Endor Galaxy requires passing through the Ovis Galaxy, where the industrial planet Orville III is located, and the Trindello Galaxy, which is home to only a few uncivilized races. This journey involves a circuitous path to reach the Endor Galaxy. If capturing the planet Angie is so challenging, what about attacking the planet Ovis? It's important to note that Ovis houses the industrial planet Orville III. Attacking an industrial planet is notoriously difficult, and anyone in the galaxy could easily list over 100 reasons why. Given the current battle situation, reaching the Dawn Star would take at least until next year. That's absurd. Seeing the silence of those around her, Onana Quat grew even angrier. She pointed at everyone and yelled, "You are all fired. Get out." Lila Blissex knew she had to intervene. She stood up, approached Onana Quat, and said, "Please calm down, Quarter. The most important thing for us now is to advance the battle situation, not to settle scores. At least, let's finish this battle first." Many people around cast grateful glances at Lila. After all, working at Quat Power Dock offered unmatched salaries. "Then tell me how to fight." Onana Quat continued to roar. "Cassio Tag is the frontline commander, and he knows the battle situation best, so the only thing we can do now is to give him all the support," Lila Blissex said. However, Onana Quat stared at Lila with bloodshot eyes and said slowly, "Give everything to Rashu Tag, and you think we will win? Tell me, you said it. If it doesn't work, I'll never forgive you." "Talking like that is meaningless, Quarter," Lila Blissex replied, unafraid. This plan was formulated with the participation of everyone present, including the Supreme Strategic Command of the Republic. Who do you want to blame? At least Cassio Tag was recommended by you, because of his incompetence. Onana Quat was still looking for someone to hold responsible. "If General Tag can't do it, why don't you go? The next launch of the hyperspace stabilizer is in 10 minutes. You can go to the front line immediately and use your ingenuity to take down the Dawn Star," Lila Blissex retorted, unable to stand Onana Quat's unreasonable behavior any longer. You traitor!" Onana Quat pointed at Lila's nose, momentarily at a loss for words. Easter Egg Chapter, Star Map of the Motor Star Area. I suddenly remembered that I forgot to include the star map of the Motor Star Area. As shown in the picture, the far right is the Angie Galaxy, and the string below the Angie Galaxy is the Kuna star cluster. The third galaxy at the bottom left of the star map is the Endor Galaxy. Additionally, the planet in the upper left corner is the Vazian planet, and the second planet in the upper left is Maya Keval, the home of the Ailu people. Finally, to the right of the Angie Galaxy is the main star region of the Milky Way. This explains why the planet Angie is the gateway to the Motor Star region. If the fourth civilization wants to rise, it must outmaneuver the Ailu people and control the planet Angie. Otherwise, they won't even be able to leave the motor sector. Chapter 1675, Catastrophic Blackout. "Traitor?" Lila Blissex sneered. "If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even have a chance to fight in this battle. Now you want to distance yourself? Fine, make a deal. We're done here. You go your way." Onana Quarter, taken aback by Lila's sharp retort, was left speechless, but continued to curse under her breath. In terms of arguments, Onana, who lived a life of luxury, was no match for Lila, who had clawed her way up through sheer determination and ruthlessness. "All right, what we need now is to figure out how to win this battle. How far we are from the Dawn Star doesn't matter. First, we must secure Angie Planet," Lila stated firmly. She knew there was no point in engaging in a shouting match with Onana. Lila had her own plans and wasn't as desperate as Onana. Onana Quarter finally stopped, though her chest heaved with anger. She raised her hand, and an attendant quickly brought her a glass of fine wine with ice. She gulped it down without a care for decorum, trying to calm herself. Her eyes, still red with fury, glared as she spat out, "What does Cassio Tag want? Give it to him. Give it all to him. I just want the Dawn Star." A staff officer hurriedly presented a prepared plan. General Tag needs more clone troops, more armored units, especially AT walkers to enhance ground long-range firepower. He also requests 20 SPAT self-propelled artillery units if possible. He is prepared to maintain a strong offensive on the ground battlefield. Do we still have a Cheer-class assault landing ship? Onana asked. There's one left, the staff officer replied. Included in the next batch of backup ships. Send him another 50,000 clone soldiers. Get ATT units from Rossana Heavy Engineering Company immediately. Have them send more at once. Yes, ma'am. The command center, which had been chaotic moments ago due to Onana's outburst, became a hive of activity once more. Onana and Lila, the two highest-ranking individuals present, stood on opposite sides, the tension between them palpable. Their conflict was irreconcilable, and they no longer bothered to hide it. In the bustling loading and unloading area, transport ships were filled with various combat materials and took off in an organized manner. At the largest spaceport, a Cheer-class assault landing ship landed in the expansive loading yard. The hatch opened, revealing a massive passageway 200 meters wide. Countless clone soldiers, arranged in formation, marched into the landing ship with synchronized steps. Beside the infantry, dozens of ATE walkers also made their way up the passage. 30 transport ships had already flown to the center of the ring-shaped hyperspace stabilizer, which had a diameter of over 10 kilometers, and lined up. After more than half an hour, the Cheer-class assault landing ship finished loading and joined the formation. In the command center, operators at various levels made final preparations. Calculate the total mass of the fleet. Fleet mass calculation complete. Proofread hyperspace fluctuations. Hyperspace fluctuations are stable. Exclude mass projection. There are a total of 177.5 million mass projections, all checked. Notify the fleet to start the hyperspace engine. Countdown from 10 seconds. 10, 9. As the countdown proceeded, the hyperspace engines of the Cheer-class assault landing ship and the 30 transport ships reached their peak. Simultaneously, ripples began to form in the center of the massive hyperspace ring. At this moment, the hyperspace stabilizer was active. If anything touched the ripple it generated, it would be sucked into hyperspace turbulence instantly. Nearby, thousands of massive energy extraction devices began drawing power from the stars. These devices created fire tornadoes as they extracted energy, which sometimes became invisible due to a lack of burning matter. This immense energy was then funneled into a colossal energy transfer station adjacent to the hyperspace stabilizer. There, it was condensed, refined, and reacted with core elements in the hyperspace engine, opening a rift between the current dimension and hyperspace. 3. Someone counted down. Suddenly, a violent explosion erupted in the energy transfer station. The blast destroyed a large energy storage device nearby, and the terrifying energy was about to erupt. The automatic management system immediately activated, and the damaged energy capsule opened a channel to release the explosive energy. It shot out like a flaming laser into the distant depths of space, disappearing from sight. Simultaneously, a piercing siren blared from the console, and the countdown halted at 1 second. The surroundings plunged into darkness as all energy supplies were interrupted, and every piece of electronic and lighting equipment went dark. Ah! Onana Quarter and Lila Blissex screamed in terror, clutching their heads. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing the area in red light. Sir, the energy storage device exploded. The emergency system is activated. The hyperspace jump is urgently stopped, an operator shouted. The large-scale energy transmission system had comprehensive safety protections and an emergency fusing system. This time, the emergency system worked, discharging the unstable energy through a superpowerful laser cannon. However, the unbalanced power supply necessitated a complete shutdown to prevent further damage. After 10 seconds, the lighting returned and electronic equipment resumed operation. Backup energy began to flow, smoothly transitioning to the main energy supply as it recovered. "How's the fleet?" Onana Quarter asked urgently. She sighed in relief when she saw the Cheer-class assault landing ship and 30 transport ships lined up intact on the hyperspace stabilizer's screen. But then, as if fate played a cruel joke, the Cheer-class assault landing ship began to disintegrate silently and slowly. There was no explosion or flame, just a gradual decomposition, as if dissected by countless sharp knives. The ship broke into countless fragments, drifting away until it was unrecognizable. The entire process took a full 10 minutes, during which the command center was utterly silent. Everyone stared at the screen, feeling as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over them. Onana Quarter watched in horror, feeling the last string of hope in her heart snap. Chapter 676, Psychology of Collapse. Onana Quarter's voice trembled as she pointed at the screen, her hands shaking uncontrollably. The cheering assault landing ship was disintegrating before their eyes, fragments scattering across a vast area. She struggled to form coherent words. This. A technician, visibly nervous, approached and reported in a hushed tone, "Dear Kuat of Kuat, the analysis results are out. The hyperspace engine of the Chira-class assault landing ship malfunctioned. When the power went out, it was caught between our current dimension and hyperspace. After the power outage, it was torn apart by hyperspace." "I know! I fucking know!" Onana Quarter screamed hysterically, clutching her head. She suddenly turned to Lila Blissex, pointing an accusatory finger at her. "It's you! The hyperspace stabilizer was under your supervision. This is all your fault." Lila Blissex, equally agitated, retorted, "You know it was just supervision. All the construction personnel were yours. I was just a figurehead." She revealed the truth about her nominal role in the hyperspace stabilizer project. "Since your name is on it, you are responsible. The overall system of this stabilizer is very stable. Such a failure is impossible without your incompetence. It's you." Onana Quarter's voice was shrill and piercing, filled with rage and frustration. "Isn't it because you're a greedy idiot who wants everything for yourself? Do you think Kuat belongs to you alone? You're taking risks and dragging us all down." Lila Blissex shouted back. The two powerful women stood about 4 or 5 meters apart, hurling insults at each other. Their language was vulgar and obscene, each trying to outdo the other with the most vicious words they could muster. The command center staff watched in shock, their perception of these women forever altered. The quarrel revealed the darkness and filth in their hearts, shattering the image of power and authority they once held. Despite the chaos, everyone in the room remained silent, heads lowered. The hierarchical structure of the quarter power shipyard was strict. Even the supervisors, who held some authority, were nothing compared to Onana Quarter, who controlled the entire shipyard, and Lila Blissex, a prominent figure close to Palpatine and backed by Dun Wessex. Finally, the head of security could no longer bear it. He threw his high hat to the ground and roared, "It's obvious someone sabotaged us! Why are you still arguing? Find the intruder!" Lila Blissex and Onana Quarter stopped their bickering and turned to look at him, along with everyone else present. "You are really something, Onana," Lila sneered before turning to leave. She had the backing of Dun Wessex and a way out. She couldn't waste time arguing with Onana Quarter. Ensuring her safety was now her priority. "Since someone has intruded, go and catch them," Onana Quarter commanded the security supervisor. "I'm quitting," the security director declared, having lost all respect for the two powerful figures at Kuat Power Dockyard. He knew that he had no future, so he did nothing. Unexpectedly, Onana Quarter, with a serious expression, said earnestly, "No, you did a good job. It was indeed my fault for losing my temper earlier. Now, we should focus on the bigger picture. You are a good person. From now on, you will be promoted 3 ranks to become the regional armed commander. I will assign 10,000 clones to your command. You need to set off immediately to find the intruders." She knew she had gone too far earlier. To restore her image, she needed to handle the current situation effectively. Although she had long wanted to tear this down-and-out superintendent to pieces, she still had to maintain appearances. The security director was momentarily flattered, then quickly composed himself. He squatted down, picked up his high hat, put it on again, puffed out his chest, and said loudly, "Yes, I will immediately start hunting for the intruders." The entire military base immediately issued the highest T level of alert. This base included hundreds of space stations and 10 huge spaceports. The scale was immense. Now, all the facilities had entered the highest level of alert. A large number of Kuat security personnel and clone troopers began to search each area meticulously. An investigation team was also sent to carefully search the area where the explosion had occurred. To avoid the spread of previous damage and facilitate the investigation, the hyperspace stabilizer was stopped, and no more fleets departed from there to the model star area. The investigation results came out quickly. The energy transfer station where the explosion occurred was indeed damaged. Moreover, the saboteurs had destroyed a core of the energy transfer station very precisely, causing the most tragic consequences with the least cost. This further confirmed that someone had invaded. For a moment, everyone in the entire base was on edge. Even Onana Quarter quickly ran into the safe area under heavy guard. But unbeknownst to them, this was just the beginning. A pair of Kuat security soldiers ran quickly to a warehouse. In that direction, a group of patrolmen had suddenly lost contact. The leading soldier approached the warehouse door and pressed the button nervously. With a click, the warehouse door opened, revealing an extremely tragic scene. Countless torn corpses lay in every corner of the warehouse. Heads, limbs, torsos, and various human body parts were scattered everywhere. It was difficult to count how many corpses there were. Among these corpses were staff members, clone soldiers, and some Kuat security soldiers. At a glance, there were at least hundreds of them. Ugh! A security soldier finally couldn't take it anymore and vomited. The faces of the others were also very pale, and at least a dozen of them vomited on the spot. Report, they're all dead. All dead. T7 team, there is no one left. The captain sent a trembling message to the headquarters. What happened? Why are they all dead? The newly promoted commander on the other end of the communication felt a chill in his heart. Just a few minutes. Why are they all dead? I don't know. It should be a lightsaber, said the captain. However, at that moment, a deep voice suddenly echoed in everyone's mind. Duma Dunala. No one can escape death. End of this chapter. Chapter 1677, The Frightened Snake. In just 1 hour, 4 horrific massacres occurred across the entire Dawn Galaxy military base. One in the warehouse, one in the mess hall, an engineering department office, and a barracks for clone troopers. These places had nothing to do with each other. They weren't even in the same space station. Yet, such a massacre happened. The only thing these places had in common was that there were no survivors, not a single one. In the warehouse and the clone barracks, all the corpses were cut into pieces, with almost none of them intact. Judging from the burnt wound sections, it was caused by a lightsaber. All the dead in the cafeteria had their throats cut with sharp blades, and the dozens of dead in the office had their heads exploded. These 4 massacre scenes, coupled with the strange power outage before, undoubtedly announced one thing. Someone had invaded. And there was no doubt that it was an invasion by Force-sensitive beings like the Jedi. Otherwise, those lightsaber wounds couldn't be explained at all. The entire Dawn Galaxy suddenly entered the highest level of alert. The total number of clone soldiers and Kuat security soldiers gathered here reached 1 million. These troops were immediately deployed to every space station in the military base to maintain constant patrols. Not only that, but there were also some dark Jedi who had fallen to the dark side, worshipped at the feet of Palpatine, and entered several secret force organizations. They began to investigate everywhere, trying to find the murderer. But there was no way at all. The massacre still continued. More than 2 hours later, another freight station was massacred. More than 40 workers and over 10 guards were not spared. Kuat Dynamic Shipyard quickly ordered a blockade of navigation between all space stations. All spaceships had to be strictly scanned when traveling to other space stations. At the same time, 10 of the Jaeger-class battlecruisers that were originally in combat readiness and were about to be sent to the model sector for combat immediately entered combat readiness and launched fighter jets to conduct non-stop inspections of the entire area. These measures were effective. A space station suddenly reported that their detector captured a vague figure. According to inference, this figure was likely a human equipped with a cloaking device. By comparing the shadows, they believed that this man was tall and dark-skinned. They immediately contacted the Republic Intelligence Department, and after comparing the data from both parties, they confirmed that this person was the one who caused trouble in the Coruscant Galactic capital before, and robbed Representative Ainl Tim, who was determined to be colluding with the Separatists. After confirming this information, Dawn Galaxy became even more nervous. Coruscant also immediately sent 2 Darkside Force Masters from the hand of the Chancellor to assist. The 2 were expected to arrive in the evening. Now the senior leaders, including Onana Court and Lila Blissex, had entered the safest safe zone to conduct remote control. Although they had broken up before, they now had to be protected in the same space station with the highest security level. The 2 of them had quarreled enough, and now they just ignored each other and did their own thing. The only good news now was that with the increased security level, the intruders' sabotage activities had been curbed. However, in the busyness, no one noticed that among one of the patrolling Kuat security soldiers, there was a person who did not belong there. James Bond was among the security forces, holding a blaster in his hand and a panicked look on his face, exactly like his teammates around him. "I just killed a few people, caused a blackout, and then completely alerted the enemy," Nova complained in her mind. "Now our biggest victory is the Cheer-class assault landing ship." "Actually, we have achieved our goal," James Bond said in response. "If I guess correctly, everyone you can come into contact with is filled with panic," James Bond mused. Gabriel Tosh's voice echoed in his mind. What he said is correct. These people are screaming, crying, and wailing in their hearts. They will all be destroyed under the power of voodoo. Right now, the security force is undoubtedly at its strongest. Even you, I don't think you can find any chance, let alone get close to the hyperspace stabilizer near the core, James Bond continued. After thorough investigation, they had already identified the name of the ring-shaped device. It will take more time to break through their firewall. The Republic has begun to pay more attention to network security, Super Lotus said. Her words were relayed by Nova. "Speaking of which, old handsome guy, when are you going to input the virus I gave you into the main engine of the Kuat power dockyard?" "That's what I'm working on," James Bond replied with a slight smile. Suddenly, he noticed movement near the hyperspace stabilizer through the porthole window. "Interesting. What's wrong?" Nova asked. Even under such circumstances, Kuat Power Shipyard is organizing the transport ships again. They want to launch the transport ships just now, James Bond observed, watching the transport fleet regroup. It seems the battle situation in the model sector is not optimistic. "If that's the case, I think they will receive my gift soon," Nova said. "What gift?" James Bond inquired. "Oh, after I killed one of the people in the engineering department office, I got mixed up with one of the engineering spacecraft. That spacecraft happened to fly over to deal with the wreckage of the disintegrated Cheer class. So, I still have some tricks up my sleeve if I get the chance," Nova chuckled. At this moment, Nova was squatting on the towering antenna of a space station. She used the electromagnetic device on her stealth combat suit to attach herself to a small signal transmitter. Raising the sniper rifle in her hand, she used the magnifying glass to view the hyperspace stabilizer. Boom! Nova imitated the sound of an explosion and pressed the detonation button simultaneously. A large ball of flames erupted on a transport ship that was preparing to launch near the hyperspace stabilizer. The explosion wasn't violent, and the transport ship didn't even shake, as it was only installed on the outside of the hull. However, this explosion completely shattered the last bit of courage that the Kuat Power Shipyard had mustered. The transport ships lining up on the hyperspace stabilizer turned around and fled in all directions, abandoning their mission. The fighter jets patrolling around them flew chaotically like headless flies. Finally, a V-19 fighter jet maintained its composure. It caught the signal emitted by the detonator in the chaos and flew in Nova's direction. Nova calmly set up the C-10 sniper rifle in her hand and aimed at the cockpit of the fighter jet. "Come on, baby." She licked her lips and pulled the trigger without hesitation. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots. Even though the V-19 Torrent fighter was flying at high speed, the bullets from the C-10 sniper rifle accurately hit the reinforced canopy of the fighter. 3 shots, same place. The V-19 fighter jet did not have a shield. The third bullet penetrated the cockpit directly, and the pilot's head exploded like a watermelon. End of this chapter. Chapter 1678, Disaster in the Dawn Galaxy, Part 2. Boom! The out-of-control V-19 fighter jet crashed into the space station, causing a violent explosion. Nova turned the muzzle of her gun, aimed at the direction of the fighter jet's fall, and looked inside the space station. The C-10 sniper rifle in her hand fired rhythmically. Several soldiers who went to rescue were immediately killed by headshots. The scene was getting more and more chaotic. At this time, the explosion of the transport ship that was about to be launched on the hyperspace stabilizer completely shattered the already fragile minds of those in the Quat Power dockyard, and more chaos began to unfold. Fortunately, the clone soldiers were almost absolutely obedient. The biggest problem was the pilots of those spaceships. They went on strike one after another and refused to drive the spacecraft to the hyperspace stabilizer because no one knew what would happen. Although the second explosion did not cause much damage, everyone saw the tragic situation of the Cheer-class assault landing ship during the first power outage. It can be said that there were nearly 20,000 people on that battleship at that time, and they couldn't even find their bodies. Each corpse was broken into countless pieces the size of a fingernail. Later, the strike spread to every place throughout the military base, and most workers refused to work. They claimed that they would never return to work unless their safety could be guaranteed. The patrol team where James Bond belonged was also in chaos. When their captain saw the explosion, he immediately led the team towards the rear barracks and ran away, not wanting to conduct any patrol mission at all. James Bond took advantage of the chaos and got into the toilet. When he came out again, he had changed into the clothes of a technical worker and was holding a personal terminal in his hand. "It seems that you don't say anything, but you can actually understand what I mean, Miss Nova," he said in his mind. "Who do you think I am? I have performed far more missions in the most dangerous places than you," Nova said lightly. "Not necessarily, miss," James Bond smiled. "Fear is not only torture of the soul, but also a lack of judgment." Orla Khan said slowly, "I will not attack innocent people again, but I will continue to eliminate their patrols." "You have been exposed, Tosh. Now is the most critical time for me here. You'd better come back and protect me," Super Lotus's voice came. "Exposed? Ha ha." Nova let out a mocking laugh. Tosh didn't speak, but with his personality, he should have moved closer to the Super Lotus by now. James Bond pretended to be in a hurry and walked briskly down the corridor, which was full of panicked staff and soldiers. In fact, strictly speaking, they did not cause much damage. Compared to this super military base, which has at least millions of staff and close to 1 million troops, the dozens or hundreds of people they killed before are nothing but a drop in the bucket. However, they succeeded in creating a panic that they would die if they worked. This directly overwhelmed the staff of Quat Power Shipyard, who were already working at a high intensity and under great pressure. James Bond pretended to be anxious, spotted a senior officer in front of him, walked up to him, grabbed his shoulder, and said in a frightened tone, Sir, where is the computing core? It's too late. It's too late. We have been invaded." The officer was immediately confused, and he subconsciously pointed in one direction. Thank you, James Bond said, and he had already run away. James Bond was still in a hurry, looking down from time to time to check the personal terminal in his hand, looking very busy and panicked. Generally speaking, ordinary people would not disturb such a person. When he came to an encrypted door, he shook a pen-like object in his hand. It was the cipher pen of the senior officer just now. He directly inserted the code pen into the socket on the door lock, and the door slid open wide. A soft hiss. James Bond unlocked the door immediately and slipped inside. "I'm in," he thought to himself, according to plan. "Sora," Nova called out. "I'm here. Kill anyone who comes close," Sora responded. A faint figure moved behind James Bond. "Then let me have some fun with them." Nova chuckled. Suddenly, she paused and said in a deep voice, "No, they are scanning with fleet-level anti-stealth radar. Tosh!" "Understood. Transferring immediately," Tosh replied. If the Galactic Republic was using fleet-level anti-stealth radar scanning, there was no doubt that Nova and Tosh's individual stealth systems would be exposed. Only the invisibility of the two Dark Templar warriors, Aura Khan and Sora A, would remain undetected. The Protoss used psychic energy for their invisibility. Boom! Nova shot down an officer, hitting him squarely in the head. Over there! A group of soldiers rushed towards her direction, firing their weapons. Although it seemed like they were shooting at empty air, the command center had pinpointed her location. Whoosh! Whoosh! Blaster beams exploded on the wall next to Nova. She moved quickly, with a hint of premonition guiding her. The dense strafing missed her as she slid sideways, switching her C-10 sniper rifle to burst mode and firing in rapid succession. Several soldiers fell to the ground immediately. Boom! Boom! An ATXT bipedal walker approached, its blaster cannons firing wildly. Very good. Come at me, baby, Nova muttered, pulling down her tactical eyepiece and setting up her C-10 sniper rifle. Boom! 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 A violent explosion engulfed her figure, but it was just a holographic projection. Meanwhile, Nova's real body pulled the trigger from another direction. Boom! 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 3 more shots in a row. The ATXT's cockpit was instantly penetrated, and the driver's brains were scattered everywhere. At that moment, a figure emerged from the smoke of the explosion. He wore a black mask and wielded a red lightsaber. As soon as he appeared, he raised his hand in Nova's direction, causing fragments and even corpses on the ground to fly towards her like bullets. A dark Jedi! And with this display of power, his strength was undoubtedly formidable. Boom! Nova fired again, but the dark Jedi moved his finger, causing a corpse to block the bullet. He moved his finger again, sending the corpse hurtling towards Nova. She dodged sideways and fired the C-10 sniper rifle once more. However, the Dark Jedi had already crossed a distance of hundreds of meters in an instant, splitting the corpse with his sword and slashing at Nova simultaneously. The blood-red sword light flashed across Nova's waist. It was another holographic projection. Boom, boom, boom. Nova's figure appeared in another direction, and she fired 3 more shots. The Dark Jedi raised his hand to form a force barrier, blocking the bullets. But 3 bullets hit the same spot, shattering the force barrier. The 3rd bullet shot straight through with all its remaining power, hitting the Dark Jedi's arm. As he was injured, a blade of light pierced his chest from the empty air. "You're 1 step late," Nova said, looking at the smoking and hot C-10 sniper rifle in her hand, knowing she couldn't use it until it cooled down. "As long as it's useful, it's never too late," replied the Dark Templar Oricon, his figure flickering behind the Dark Jedi's corpse. "Let's go. Let's do something big. Let them come and chase us," Nova said, chewing her bubblegum as her figure disappeared into the air again. Chapter 1679, The Disaster in the Dawn Galaxy. They are at the UT-14 space station. Block all traffic on the entire space station immediately. The Defense Force commander of the Dawn Galaxy's command center issued the order with urgency. The military base was vast, comprising hundreds of space stations. In this situation, cutting off traffic and completely blockading the base where the invaders appeared was the only viable strategy. To achieve this, they temporarily halted all transportation, sacrificing the entire base's operations. Finally, they had cornered the intruders. At least 2 of them were trapped in the space station. With all traffic stopped, they could proceed to capture them slowly. If that failed, they would resort to blowing up the entire space station. Upon receiving the news, Onanakuat was overjoyed. He immediately ordered 2 Jaeger-class battlecruisers to surround the space station completely and dispatched a clone army to conduct a thorough search. The space station housed more than 7,000 staff members. If it came to blowing it up, it would only be done as a last resort. While the manhunt was underway, James Bond had completed his mission. He had successfully implanted the computer virus provided by Super Lotus into the military base's mainframe. No matter how robust the base's firewall was, it couldn't withstand this attack. As we all know, the most direct way to infect a well-protected computer with a virus is to disguise it as an action movie, trick the owner into downloading it, and then save it on the C drive despite the firewall's alarms. "Very good. I have received feedback from the Trojan horse," Super Lotus's voice came through. "Retreat as soon as possible. They will soon discover what I did to the monitoring system." James Bond put away his tools and said to the air beside him, "Go." As soon as he spoke, a person rushed in from outside. It was the senior officer whose identity card Bond had stolen earlier, accompanied by several clone soldiers. "He is the one who stole my cipher pen. Catch him!" the officer shouted angrily. "You know, I just wanted to visit the command center," James Bond said, unfazed, as he straightened his collar. "Understood." A deep voice suddenly echoed in the void. In the next second, a scream was heard, and a clone soldier was sliced in half by a light blade that appeared out of nowhere. A few minutes later, James Bond emerged wearing the senior officer's military uniform. He straightened his clothes and walked towards the command center. Meanwhile, in a nearby inconspicuous communication maintenance ship docked at the spaceport, Super Lotus was rapidly operating in the control center. She had modified the control center to communicate with the military base's network system through the spacecraft's high-power antenna. "Let's see what I can do." Super Lotus had a playful smile on her lips. She extended her index finger, shook it, and then pressed a button on the keyboard. Simultaneously, alarms blared loudly in another space station. All the fire protection systems activated, and several B-1 firefighting robots emerged, wielding high-pressure water spray guns. They aimed at the bewildered staff in the office and pulled the triggers, turning the office into a chaotic mess. "Sir, there is a catastrophic fire on the UE-114 space station, and immediate reinforcements are requested. Report, energy storage tank No. 997 is leaking. It may explode. Battleship Venomous B, what are you doing? Get back to the berth immediately. Please respond." Commander Kuat's voice echoed through the control room, his earlier confidence now replaced by a chilling dread. Reports of over a dozen dangerous situations flooded in simultaneously, leaving him feeling overwhelmed. "This is impossible. How could so many things go wrong at once? How many infiltrators are there?" He slammed his fists onto the console, teetering on the edge of collapse. "Sir, it's bad. The UT-14 space station has launched all its escape capsules." A soldier rushed over, his face pale with urgency. "What? Didn't I order them to monitor every escape pod?" The commander was shocked, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Deploy fighter jets immediately. Intercept all escape pods and ensure no intruders get away." On the holographic star map, countless escape capsules could be seen launching from the heavily surrounded space station. "There are more than 1,000 escape pods. I said intercept all of them." Kuat's voice was a mix of desperation and command. Alarms blared throughout the military base, and the communication systems began to experience interference. Soldiers were exhausted, their minds clouded with confusion and fatigue. Each alarm could signal a real threat, and the invaders had already proven their capability for devastating destruction. Amidst the chaos, James Bond, under the cover of the female Dark Templar Sora A, made his way to the command center of the space station. "There are 46 people inside," Sora A informed him, "all military personnel." A determined look flashed in James Bond's eyes. "Understood." A blood-curdling scream erupted from an officer, signaling the start of another massacre. Amidst the turmoil, James Bond reached the command center's console unnoticed. He pulled down a body slumped over it, tossed it aside, and inserted a virus-laden storage disk into the control console. He quickly activated a host and began his operation. If I remember correctly, the Galactic Republic fleet's system should be independent. Let's see if we can break through from here. The Republic's military firewall is far more complex than Kuat's civilian one. But let me give it a try, Chao Lianhua said, her tone surprisingly relaxed. Less than a minute later, she laughed triumphantly. "Aha, done!" James Bond continued his work. "Let's see. That's right. The most advanced command center in this galaxy is on that space station." He marked one of the space stations on the map. "Destroy this space station and leave the entire base leaderless. I've given instructions to several battleships to open fire." "It would be too obvious to have them fire directly on the command post," Super Lotus interjected. "See, I'm smarter. I made the fire control systems of these battleships think there's an enemy ship between them and the command space station. Now, you just need to let them fire on this enemy ship." Chapter 1680, Leaderless. "Someone has obviously invaded our system. Clean it up immediately." Onana Court screamed, her voice echoing through the high-security space station. The chaos unfolding at the Dawn Galaxy base had driven her to the brink of madness. She turned her fury towards the commander, her eyes wild with desperation. No, computer viruses are everywhere now. The commander was equally frantic, staring helplessly at the command screen filled with error messages. He could do nothing but run his hands through his hair in frustration. Our network security department is fully operational, but so far it has had little effect, the Minister of Cybersecurity interjected. Experts from the Intelligence Department of the Galactic Republic have been notified to assist. They have an artificial intelligence system dedicated to virus removal, which should be able to eliminate the virus soon. Then get them here quickly, Onana Court yelled. Our entire Dawn galaxy is completely paralyzed. Don't you see it? There are people on the other side that we don't even recognize. And where are the 2 people we blocked in the space station just now? Have you caught them? The commander glanced at the space station, still under heavy siege, and the fighter jets intercepting the thousands of rescue capsules. He was at a loss for words. As if the situation wasn't chaotic enough, a piercing alarm suddenly blared from the command center. Sir, we've been targeted by the fire control radar, a radar soldier shouted, turning around in alarm. What did you say? Onana Court was shocked. It's the battleship Elkan and the battleship Yamakaze. They are aiming in our direction, the radar soldier reported loudly. What are they doing? Do they want to rebel? Onana Court screamed. Tell them to stop, stop! The communication department operator quickly worked at the console. He looked at the screen, his face blank with disbelief. No, the feedback from their fire control system is that they are targeting an invading enemy spaceship. But this spaceship does not exist. If they open fire on this non-existent spaceship, they will undoubtedly hit us. Are they idiots? Don't they know they'll hit us? Onana Court was frantic, her voice rising in panic. They are more than 14,000 kilometers away from us, far beyond visual range. I guess their radar system has also been hacked, and they don't know our position at all, the radar soldier explained. I don't care what the situation is. Just tell them to stop, stop, Onana Court shouted. No response from communication. Boom, boom. Before he could finish speaking, a series of explosions rocked the space station. Everyone instinctively crouched down to maintain their balance. We are under attack. It is confirmed to be an XX-9 turbo-laser cannon, number 7. The radar soldier yelled. No, they are going to kill me. They are going to kill me. Onana Court's face turned pale with fear. At this moment, Leela Blissex, who had been standing silently on the other side, turned and walked out without a word. The security personnel and senior officials beside her followed suit. It was clear she was ready to flee. Where are you going? Onana Court shouted after her. But Lila ignored her, quickening her pace and disappearing from sight. Asshole! Are you going to run away? Onana Court stamped her feet in anger. She turned to the terrified officers, seeing the control center in disarray, with errors flashing everywhere. Gritting her teeth, she pointed at the officers and commanded, We must do everything possible to catch the intruders. I'll go find the Galactic Republic Navy to send more battleships for reinforcements. With that, she hurriedly left with her closest aides. The officers left behind exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what to say or do. Moments later, Onana Quarter, who had already boarded the shuttle and was about to depart, received a communication from the Expeditionary Force Commander, Cassio Tag, in the model sector. The mess, age read, the hyperspace channel leading directly to Dawn Planet has been discovered. Do you want to attack? Upon seeing this message, Onana Quarter felt a surge of adrenaline. Her face flushed with a mix of old and new anger. Without hesitation, she shouted into the communicator, Attack! Attack immediately! Flatten Dawn Planet to the ground for me. An hour earlier, in the model sector, in the outer orbit of the planet Anaji, the same information had been relayed to Cassio Tag. General, we captured a separatist pilot who confirmed the existence of a hyperspace channel leading directly to Dawn Planet. The separatists are using this channel to continuously send biological and chemical weapons to the ground battlefield on Anaji, the intelligence officer reported. Cassio Tag picked up his personal terminal pad and reviewed the interrogation record, frowning. Is the information reliable? We used all methods, including Veritaserum, to confirm the information. This is the latest formula from the medical department, capable of extracting information from the deepest parts of a person's subconscious, the intelligence officer replied confidently. Has it been tested? General Tag's aide-de-camp, veteran Laszlo Dolittle, inquired. We conducted a trial run with a spacecraft's hyperspace engine. It was indeed possible to enter hyperspace through these coordinates. However, to avoid alerting the enemy, we stopped the process before initiating the jump, the intelligence officer nodded. Cassio Tag pondered for a moment. General, our primary objective should be to secure the planet Anaji, Laszlo Dolittle interjected, sensing Tag's distraction. I understand, Cassio Tag replied softly, though his mind seemed elsewhere. Worried about Tag's potential decisions, Laszlo quickly addressed the army commander on the other side. Intensify the offensive on Anaji. Deploy another legion to the southern capital area. Inform Dawn Galaxy that we need more clone troopers immediately. However, Cassio Tag stood up and raised his hand to halt the order. Stop! Don't send reinforcements yet. General, we've advanced another 15 kilometers. We're now less than 60 kilometers from the core of the capital area, Laszlo Dolittle exclaimed, but he was met with Cassio Tag's fervent gaze. End of this chapter. Chapter 1681, Final Decision. General. Laszlo Dorit's voice trembled. Notify the staff. Immediately formulate a plan to attack Dawn Planet and conduct a simulation right away. Cassio Tag commanded loudly. General, we don't have the resources to divide our forces for an attack on Dawn Planet right now, and there's no doubt that Dawn Planet, as the home of the Death Angels, must have an ironclad defense. Dolit protested. Bang! Cassio Tag slammed his fist on the console. Then you should take down Anaji Planet. He pointed at the chaotic ground battle map. Haven't you noticed yet? Tang Xiao doesn't care about the situation on Anaji. He's using biological and chemical weapons here without restraint. Even if he wins, he won't care if Anaji is in ruins. Then we can continue to increase our troops and press the attack. Isn't that what you decided before? Laszlo Dolit argued. As long as we keep up the pressure, no matter how many biological and chemical weapons they use, we can defeat them. Biological and chemical weapons can't compete with armored forces. The rear has approved our request and will increase the number of ATE walkers in future deployments. Continue to attack and get an Anaji planet that has no strategic value, Cassio Tag retorted. How could it be useless? Anaji can become our most important base for advancement, Dolit insisted. And then what? There's information that Xiao plans to transfer the Titan battleship Xuanwu back from the Ariadu system. Once the Xuanwu returns to Dawn Planet, even if we occupy Anaji, we won't stand a chance. Cassio Tag shouted. In the end, all our efforts will only get us Anaji. Even if we don't attack Dawn Planet, we can go south to attack the Kuna star cluster or north to attack Vathian Planet, Laszlo Dolit suggested. This makes no sense. What Kuat wants is Dawn Planet. Do you understand? They want Dawn Planet's battleship database, Cassio Tag exclaimed. Who do you think this fleet belongs to? The Galactic Republic? No, the Republic has long run out of money. Even for the Kuat Power Shipyard, they owe tens of billions in military expenses. These battleships were given to us by Kuat. Do you think they're helping us expand our territory? But that's not a reason to turn around and attack Dawn Planet now, and the direct route to Dawn Planet hasn't even been confirmed. Laszlo Dorit countered. If we divide our forces now, can we guarantee the capture of Dawn Planet? No, that will only make us lose our advantage on Anaji. How much defense do you think Dawn Planet has? All their fleets have been sent out. Can Dawn Planet even muster one large warship now? Tag questioned. That's just an estimate from the intelligence agency. We're not sure of their actual production capacity, Dolit replied. The two argued for a long time without reaching a conclusion, neither able to convince the other. On one hand, Cassio Tag felt that the slow progress on Anaji, due to biological and chemical attacks, warranted a direct assault on Dawn Planet. He believed Dawn Planet was vulnerable, and a swift attack could yield significant results. Moreover, he thought that the Separatists wouldn't dare use T-virus biochemical weapons on their capital planet, giving his clone army a better chance of victory. There was another reason Tag didn't mention. What if the goal was smaller? Just a raid on Dawn Planet to seize the battleship database? In that case, they wouldn't need to occupy the entire planet. They could simply grab the data and leave. After the recent battle, he had no desire to remain in the model sector any longer. Laszlo Dolit's objections were straightforward. They had no idea what lay ahead, yet they were recklessly dividing their forces. What was the current battle plan? Was it to be abandoned? What about the sacrifices of tens of thousands of clone troopers and the loss of dozens of battleships? Were those to be discarded as well? Moreover, the destination in question was not just any place, it was Dawn Star, Tang Xiao's hometown. It was obvious that the strongest defenses would be there. Even if there was no fleet, intelligence indicated that Dawn Planet had a complete star ring. What could the star ring be used for besides housing and factories? A giant orbital defense system. Those super laser cannons with massive reactors, did they really want to test them with their fleet? Why did no one dare to attack planet Kuat? Because of the countless powerful cannons on its space star ring. Even if Dawn Planet's star ring didn't have as many cannons, it surely had numerous other defense facilities. The planetary shield would be of the highest level. Could an expeditionary force capture it in haste? The two argued for a long time. Eventually, Cassio Tag, exasperated, shouted at Laszlo Dolit, "I am the commander here. This is my final order. As an advisor to the expeditionary force and your adjutant, I have the right to question your irrational orders." Laszlo Dolit retorted, standing his ground. "As long as I am here, I will never allow an attack on Dawn Star. You're collaborating with the enemy and committing treason." Tag's eyes blazed with fury. "I'm saving you," Dolit replied through gritted teeth. Cassio Tag stared into Dolit's determined eyes and finally relented. "Report this information to the rear and let Kuat decide." "Military operations on the front line should not be decided by businessmen," Dolit began, but Tag cut him off. "All our fleets belong to her." Laszlo Dolit finally lowered his head, speechless. The message was quickly sent to Onana Kuat. At that time, Kuat, in a state of collapse and madness, gave her murderous instructions: attack Dawn Planet immediately and level it to the ground. Hearing Onana Kuat's crazed vixen-like voice, Laszlo Dolit let out a long sigh. A veteran of the military for decades, he had participated in the Stark Hyperspace War, the largest military operation of the Galactic Republic before the Clone Wars. He had seen it all. He removed his military cap and badge, placed them on the table beside him, and left silently. Throughout the entire scene, Cassio Tag watched with a cold expression, saying nothing. Chapter 1682, Cassio Tag's Determination. Cassio Tag finally decided to attack Dawn Planet. His judgment was not an irrational decision. On the contrary, from his perspective, it was the best solution to the current dilemma. First of all, the prerequisite for the large-scale military operation of raiding the model sector is a surprise attack. However, after arriving on Anaji and seeing the defense facilities and fleets waiting there, the element of surprise was lost. The separatists were well prepared. The next step was to storm Anaji. However, the Angel of Death struck first, and as soon as the battle began, the vanguard was overwhelmed and cried for reinforcements. Later, John Droga and Sarquis, two dark-side powerhouses from the Hand of Speaker, intervened and barely managed to halt the massacre by the Angel of Death. In the ensuing fleet battle, they faced the opponent's advanced Catastrophe-class battlecruisers and Hell's Angel-class battlecruisers head-on, resulting in slow progress. Eventually, they had to concentrate their firepower to severely damage the interstellar base and force a landing. However, the landing battles were fraught with setbacks. The extensive use of biological and chemical weapons turned urban combat into a nightmare for the Republic's clone army. While these weapons couldn't compete with the Republic's armored forces on open battlefields, they inflicted heavy casualties in street fighting. Now, more than half a month since the war began, this battle was considered a failure. Even if they occupied Anaji and used it as an advance base, and even if they successfully constructed the hyperspace stabilizer to build a stable channel from the Dawn Galaxy to the Anaji Galaxy, it would be futile. To put it bluntly, even if the channel is opened, what then? Is Kuat Dynamic Shipyard planning to fight against the separatists of Dawn Planet or the Galactic Republic? Kuat Power Shipyard is just a company, albeit one with industrial capabilities far exceeding those of Dawn Planet. Companies pursue profits and cannot afford to expend their precious production capacity here. As for the Galactic Republic, if they were truly capable, they wouldn't have left matters here to Kuat Power Dockyard. The Republic is currently engaged on multiple fronts, fighting a bloody battle with the Geth in the north, besieging Salakami, guarded by General Grievous in the east, advancing on Rhinos in the south to rebuild the 14th Army, and still fighting in the Yago-Dur system in the west. The Republic simply doesn't have the resources to waste in the Anaji galaxy. Therefore, this raid on the model star sector was doomed from the start. As the commander-in-chief of the expeditionary force, Cassio Tag was certainly to blame for this failure. He became the commander-in-chief due to the good relationship between his Tag family and Governor Dun Wessex, and he was promoted directly to Major General from Major. After receiving such a significant benefit, delivering a failure was unacceptable. Dun Wessex would undoubtedly shift all responsibility onto Cassio Tag to save himself, effectively ending Tag's military career. Veteran Laszlo Dolit's advice made sense from a military perspective, but Cassio Tag, who grew up in a prominent family, had a broader view. He understood that war is not just about battles on the battlefield, it ultimately comes down to politics. According to his understanding, Severance, Tan, the top general on the Separatist side and the primary target of Cassio Tag, found herself in a precarious situation. On the battlefield, Severance Tan consistently decimated the Republic fleet, instilling fear in their commanders whenever she appeared, even with just a single frigate. Despite her prowess, it was Matt Horner who ultimately became the commander-in-chief of the Navy. Now, with a shift in strategy to attack Dawn Planet, the plan seemed absurd and contrary to any military theory. Yet, for Cassio Tag, it was the optimal solution. Moreover, he wasn't entirely uncertain about the success of his attack. The quarter-power shipyard had invested over 400 battleships in the raid on the model star area. Despite heavy losses, continuous reinforcements meant he still commanded a significant force, 207 ships. While this number appeared substantial, it paled in comparison to the 110 Hunter-class battlecruisers still assembled in the Dawn Galaxy. Half a month into the war, the expeditionary force had already lost over 90 Jaeger-class battlecruisers in the Anji Galaxy. According to the naval establishment of the Galactic Republic, this equated to the loss of 3 entire galaxy fleets. Yet, with his robust reserve of troops, Tag maintained a firm advantage in the Anji Galaxy's space battlefield. In addition to covering troop landings, escorting transport fleets, and pursuing separatist warships, this unprecedented army faced no fatal threats from the separatist fleet. Thus, launching a successful attack on Dawn Planet with the relatively intact battleships seemed feasible. The Republic Intelligence Department had confirmed multiple times that Dawn Planet had no more battleships. Heavy troops were deployed in the Ariadu and Yago-Dur systems, and the ongoing battle in the Anaji system left them with no additional mobile power. Tag assembled a massive fleet to directly attack Dawn Planet, with the only significant threat being the planet's star ring. He contemplated negotiating with Tang Xiao, proposing to exchange battleship design data for a promise not to bomb Dawn Planet. This would allow him to return with valuable data, achieving a mutually beneficial outcome. According to the staff's latest report, of the 207 battleships, 95 were relatively intact and suitable for raid operations, almost all being Jaeger-class battlecruisers. Along with his flagship, the Commander-class dreadnought ship Tag, he planned to use this force to attack Dawn Planet. The remaining 102 warships would be sufficient to maintain control over Anaji Planet, at least preserving the current status quo. Seizing this opportunity, Cassio Tag was resolute in his decision. Chapter 1683, Battle of Dawn 1. The Battle of Dawn Star paved the way for the final establishment of the Fourth Reich. This battle marked the dawn of the Empire. History of the Fourth Reich, Chapter 147, first subparagraph. A total of 95 Jaeger-class battlecruisers began to separate from their respective squadrons and reorganize. They were divided into 3 battle groups, each consisting of 30 Jaeger-class battlecruisers, with the remaining 5 ships stationed around the flagship Tager as escorts. The Tager, being a Commander-class dreadnought and not the newer Commander 2 class, was massive but lacked advanced combat capabilities. In the event of a reckless raid by the Separatists, the Commander-class dreadnoughts still posed a significant threat. Cassio Tag made his way to the cell on the battleship, where a prisoner was being held. The prisoner, an officer who had been tortured beyond recognition, lay dying on the ground. He was a male human in his 30s. Tag didn't speak. He simply observed the man quietly. He then squatted down, tore off a soldier card from the prisoner's neck, and examined it closely. The soldier's card, written in Galaxy Standard Language, read, Su Yang, navigator and captain of the LA-3019 transport formation, race human, blood type A. As he fumbled with the soldier card, made of high-temperature resistant material, Cassio thought to himself how thoughtful it was. In the Republic, such considerations were rare. Clone troopers and ordinary soldiers were often seen as expendable, with no marks to remember them by. But he still didn't speak. He stared at the prisoner for a long time before getting up and returning to the bridge. Straightening his military cap and adjusting his collar, he announced loudly, Battle Group B, set off immediately. The target is the Endor Galaxy, the Dawn planet. The 30 Jaeger-class battlecruisers immediately activated their hyperspace engines. With a flash of dazzling white light, the battleships entered hyperspace and vanished instantly. Calculate hyperspace fluctuations immediately, Cassio Tag ordered. The navigator turned back and reported, the hyperspace fluctuation is 7.4. The scale of this channel is not large. We estimate that we can pass one more battle group. Then, the third battle group will have to wait for 9 standards. After Battle Group B sends back the message, I will personally lead Battle Group A to the Endor Galaxy first, Cassio Tag declared. His new adjutant quickly tried to dissuade him. General, please reconsider. Dawn Planet is the core planet of separatism. This is too rash. This raid is reckless, Cassio Tag said firmly. We have no retreat. We can only win or die in battle. But no matter what, we will strike a heavy blow to the heart of separatism. Time passed minute by minute. After nearly a standard hour, Cassio Tag received a hyperspace communication from Battle Group B. We have arrived at the target location, confirmed to be the Endor Galaxy. There are no large capital ships in the galaxy. Is it done? Cassio Tag's eyes became extremely sharp. He then waved his hands suddenly and shouted in an almost roaring voice, Battle Group A, start the hyperspace engine. Set off immediately. The outer ring of the Milky Way, southwest, the Endor system. This remote galaxy had only 4 planets, the closest to the star being a light blue gas giant with a diameter of 148,000 kilometers, the planet Endor. 9 moons orbited the planet Endor, and the planet Dawn, or more precisely, the Dawn moon, was one of them. From the outer orbit of the planet, the Dawn planet appeared minuscule. Against the backdrop of Endor, it looked like an inconspicuous lump of Earth. Yet, this seemingly insignificant and small planet, the power that shook the entire galaxy, has exploded. Surrounding the Dawn planet, there is a complete star ring along with numerous space stations, scientific research stations, space docks, and other industrial facilities. It is evident that from the beginning of its development, this planet had a clear plan to build many facilities directly in space, conserving the very limited space on the planet itself. Additionally, around the gas giant Endor, there is an ocean moon, Cave Bill, where large bright lights indicate a highly industrialized civilization. These 2 moons, along with numerous industrial facilities, encircle the gas giant Endor, making it particularly prosperous. A burst of fierce white light flashed, and the 8,000-meter-long body of the Commander-class dreadnought appeared in space, the flagship of the Republic Expeditionary Force, the TAG. Following closely were 30 Jaeger-class battlecruisers. Nearby, the 30 Jaeger-class ships of Battle Group B had already formed a battle formation and were ready. Several of these Jaeger-class battlecruisers had deployed their hangar platforms, with fighter formations taking off and landing. Some fighter jets were surrounding the battleship formations for guard purposes. In the distance, sensor signals indicated that the fighter formation of Battle Group B, which had taken off in advance, had come into contact with the defenders of Dawn Planet. The forward fighter formation reported that they were engaging the defending fighters, which were primarily Vulture robot fighters, with about 100 ghost fighters. Although the number of enemy troops was not large, the star ring of Dawn Planet possessed very powerful anti-aircraft firepower. After a brief trial, the fighter formation abandoned the idea of getting closer. "Go forward, surround the Dawn Star," Cassio Tag commanded. The two battle groups, along with his flagship totaling 66 battleships, began to accelerate. They split into two routes, flying towards the north and south poles of the Dawn Planet to avoid direct confrontation with the powerful firepower of the star ring. Their plan was to first control the poles and then initiate a blockade of the equator, where the star ring was located. At that moment, flashes of light emanated from the rings of the Dawn Star. The radar operator shouted, "We are targeted by the fire control radar. The enemy's rings are firing. Initiate evasive action immediately. Spread out and move towards the north and south poles. Avoid the front of the star ring." Cassio Tag ordered. "Yes, sir." The warships of the Republic fleet began to accelerate, adjust their direction, and perform irregular evasive maneuvers. Thick laser beams passed around the warships, and many laser beams hit directly. However, under the protection of the battleship's deflector shields, large energy ripples were generated, effectively blocking the attacks. Chapter 1684, War at Dawn 2. Cassio Tag commanded his fleet to advance at full speed against the firepower of Dawn Planet's star ring in the distance. The heavy turbolaser cannons and heavy pulse lasers installed on the star ring opened fire wildly. Fighters from both sides engaged near the surrounding space facilities, but the intensity of the dogfights was not particularly high. Dawn Planet launched about 500 fighters, while the Galactic Republic deployed a similar number. The commander of Battle Group B, who had arrived first, was cautious and did not launch a large number of fighters rashly. Cassio Tag, upon leading Battle Group A to the scene, agreed with this decision. Dawn Planet was notorious among the separatist forces currently raging throughout the galaxy. Cassio Tag had every reason to approach this battle with the utmost caution, firmly believing that the planet's defenses could not be underestimated. However, he also had a compelling reason to attack, relying on the powerful fleet he commanded, 95 Jaeger-class battlecruisers and 20,000 fighters. So far, it seemed that Dawn Planet had no battleships or spaceships in sight, possibly hiding in the spaceport of the Star Ring after seeing the Republic's massive fleet. "Keep going, keep firing, aim at Dawn Planet, and fire freely," Cassio Tag ordered, deciding to force a showdown. Under his command, the Jaeger-class battlecruisers lowered their bows and assumed a salvo position. The 8 XX-9 twin-mounted heavy turbolaser cannons under the bridge opened fire wildly. Countless energy beams struck the star ring and the planetary shield of Dawn Planet, causing waves of light blue energy ripples. The Republic's fleet split into two groups, heading towards the north and south poles of Dawn Planet at high speed. As the distance between the two sides closed, the counterattack from Dawn Planet's star ring became more intense. A barrage of missiles and proton torpedoes rained down on the Republic fleet. In the constant exchange of fire, the shield of a Jaeger-class battlecruiser was breached, leading to its explosion and disintegration under continuous blows. Meanwhile, the battle between the fighter formations reached a decisive point. After another 500 fighters took off, all 400 Vulture droid fighters and 100 Ghost fighters from Dawn Planet were shot down. Seeing that Dawn Planet seemed to have no intention of launching more fighters, Cassio Tag ordered 2,000 fighters to take off for escort, protecting 400 Y-wing bombers, preparing to launch the first wave of bombings on the Star Ring. According to the current combat regulations of the Republic Navy, when the Jaeger-class battlecruiser launched fighters, it needed to lift its bow to expose the belly of the battleship, allowing the fighter formation to take off without being directly attacked by enemy fire. However, this posture was not suitable for artillery warfare, rendering the Jaeger-class battlecruiser unable to engage in artillery fire while launching fighters. This limitation became a factor in the Jaeger-class's obsolescence due to evolving strategic and tactical needs as the war progressed. Watching a large number of fighters take off, Cassio Tag felt that the time was right. He stood up and went to the communications room, as he could not conduct the next call on the bridge without risking a morale drop if other officers overheard the communication. He intended to negotiate with Dawn Planet. Despite his fleet's size, he doubted his ability to occupy Dawn Planet outright. Breaking through the planetary shield would take time, especially with his fleet composed entirely of Jaeger-class ships. To truly achieve the effect of annihilating the enemy, he needed a different approach. One still has to come at the Knight level. The firepower of a Knight-class ship is equivalent to 8 to 10 Chasseur-class ships. Only this kind of firepower can completely burn a planet into glass beads. But similarly, Cassio Tag doesn't think he will lose. With 95 Hunter-class ships and 20,000 fighter jets, this is no joke. Given the current state of Dawn Planet, ablaze everywhere, he doesn't believe Tang Xiao has the strength to compete with his fleet. He took a deep breath, turned on the communicator, and said in as serious and solemn a tone as possible, "Cassio Tag, Rear Admiral of the Republic Navy, Commander-in-Chief of the Republic Expeditionary Force. I would like to ask Tang Xiao, Governor of Dawn Planet, to come and talk." When Cassio Tag mentioned his rank of Rear Admiral, he felt a little embarrassed, so he added that he was the Commander-in-Chief of the fleet. Additionally, the Galaxy Republic has never recognized the Principality of Dawn, so it was impossible for him to call Tang Xiao Grand Duke. The communication line flickered for a while, and after about 5 minutes, a person walked into the projection from outside the screen. He was wearing a red coat and a black cloak, with various medals hanging on his chest. A golden ribbon hung diagonally on his left shoulder, and he held a star scepter. He approached the holographic projection, sat directly on the sofa, and cast a disdainful look at Cassio Tag. As soon as their eyes met, Tag felt like he was being stabbed by electricity. In that simple look, the unruly and ruthless nature of someone who had been in a position of superiority for a long time made people shudder. For Tang Xiao, who had ruled the Fourth Civilization for nearly 20 years with the power of the dark side, the Force was not needed at all to intimidate this so-called top student who had just graduated from the military academy a few years ago. Cassio Tag was taken aback by Tang Xiao's aura. He couldn't help but puff up his chest, put his hands behind his back, and stand in a standard military posture. A drop of cold sweat trickled down his forehead. "Do you know why I agreed to meet you, Cassio Tag?" Tang Xiao said lightly. "You must come to see me, because this is related to the people of Dawn Planet." Cassio Tag's tone was a little stiff, but he still tried hard to say what he had thought about for a long time and practiced silently hundreds of times before. "I came to see you because of your courage." Tang Xiao retracted his terrifying gaze, and his tone became more easygoing. "Not just anyone has the courage to break into the enemy's heart, even if they bring a powerful fleet. So I admire you very much. Regardless of your ability, because of your responsibility and bravery, I think you deserve a conversation with me. Dawn Planet can avoid this military disaster. As long as you come up with something that satisfies me, Dawn Planet will not be destroyed," Cassio Tag said. "I'm not interested in your conditions, General Tag. I just wanted to say a few words to you so that you can enjoy the honor of meeting me, nothing more." Tang Xiao stood up and took a few steps closer to the projection screen. The smile on his face became extremely fierce. "Next, it's time to harvest." End of chapter.